Let's cast our minds back, not to quiet libraries or grand castles, but to the true, pulsating heart of any medieval settlement, the tavern. It was a world unto itself, a boisterous, smoke-filled, and perpetually damp haven, an accidental confluence where the lines blurred between knight and knave, merchant and miscreant. More than just a simple establishment for ale, the medieval tavern served as the town's lifeblood, its unofficial parliament, and its most reliable, if often distorted, news conduit. Beneath its rough-hewn, often leaky thatched roof, danger danced a jig with uproarious laughter, while disease lurked in every shared cup and unwashed corner. Here, a lord might lose his coin to a peasant's cunning, and a bard might gain a patron or a beating, all in the span of a single evening. So, as we prepare to step through time, take a deep breath. Before you settle into your modern comforts, let's set the stage. Perhaps dim the ambient lights in your own space, allowing shadows to lengthen. Close your eyes for a moment, and let any background hum fade into the anticipation of another era. We're about to embark on a vivid, visceral journey into a place both utterly alien and strangely familiar. If you find yourself captivated by these forgotten corners of history, consider joining our growing guild of fellow travelers. And I'm always curious to know, from what distant shore, or what hour of night or day, do you join us on this adventure? The global tapestry of our shared curiosity is truly remarkable. Now, let's truly ease into tonight's expedition. Imagine, if you will, the squelch of mud beneath your worn boots. You've spent the better part of the day navigating streets that are less paved thoroughfares and more open sewers, slicked by a recent downpour or the persistent drizzle that seems to cling to everything. The air is a thick, unholy brew of smells, the acrid tang of horse manure, the ever-present pall of wood smoke from countless hearths, and the cloying, mysterious aroma of some communal cooking pot bubbling nearby. Rain has plastered your meager cloak to your shoulders, and your only pair of shoes, already several sizes too big or too small, now slosh with every weary step. Your stomach growls a complaint that echoes your empty purse, and twice today you've had to leap from the path to avoid being flattened by an overloaded cart of muddy turnips, driven by a surly farmer who clearly prioritized his produce over your continued existence. You are, in a word, utterly spent, and more than anything else, you need a drink. A strong one. But how does one even find such an establishment in this chaotic tapestry of medieval life? There are no neon signs beckoning, no cleverly crafted Yelp reviews to guide your choice, and certainly no glowing GPS marking your destination. Here, your most reliable compass is your own senses, primarily your ears. You strain to hear past the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer shaping hot iron, past the booming cries of the fishmonger hawking his fresh river eels that look suspiciously sluggish. And then you catch it, a cacophony, a raucous chorus of overlapping laughter, boisterous shouting, and somewhere amidst it all, a lone, surprisingly aggressive voice belting out a ballad dedicated entirely to a goose. That, my friend, is your siren's song. Following the joyous din, you round a corner, stepping over a fresh pile of refuse, and there it stands. A building of timber and wattle, its very structure seeming to lean precariously, as if the entire edifice has indulged in one too many flagons of ale itself. Above the heavy oak door, a weather-beaten wooden sign hangs askew, its crude painting almost entirely faded. Is that a lopsided barrel? Or a bear attempting a jig? Perhaps, in its whimsical decay, it's both. Ambiguous as it may be, this humble, lurching structure is undeniably your destination. This is it. Welcome to the haven, the hub, the glorious, grimy medieval tavern. The very threshold promises an experience. The front step, worn smooth by generations of muddy boots, is slick with a thin film of spilled ale, making your already precarious footing even more treacherous. With a grunt, you push against the heavy, iron-hinged door, which responds with a drawn-out, theatrical groan, a creak so profound and dramatic it could almost serve as the tavern's own peculiar fanfare, announcing your arrival to all within. The moment the gap widens, you're hit. Not gently, but like a physical blow, a drunken handshake of sensations. Warm air, thick and humid, wraps around you, carrying with it the potent, inescapable perfume of dense wood smoke, damp wool from sodden cloaks, the sour tang of stale beer, and the unsettling, yet oddly inviting, aroma of mystery meat. Your journey, in essence, has just begun. You've made it. Stepping fully inside, you immediately notice the low ceiling, a dark canopy of soot-stained beams that forces even moderately tall men to stoop and guarantees a skull-rattling bump for any patron already a few alish deep. Beneath your feet, the floor is not merely dirty in a modern sense. It is, quite literally, packed earth, hardened mud, uneven and treacherous. A thin scattering of straw has been haphazardly strewn across it, a feeble, perhaps even cynical, attempt to create an illusion of cleanliness. It fails, miserably. There are no cozy, private booths here, no polite waiters presenting polished menus. The very concept of quiet conversation seems utterly alien. This, you realize, is the primal heart of a medieval tavern, an establishment that exists in only two fundamental states: aggressively, gloriously rowdy, or tragically, irrevocably closed, usually due to an unfortunate fire. Your eyes, slowly adjusting to the flickering candlelight, scan the chaotic scene. You manage to spot a precarious opening on a lopsided wooden bench, positioned dangerously close to the roaring, spitting hearth. But as you approach, you notice the seed is wet. Wet with what? You wisely decide against further investigation, a silent vow to wipe it clean with a corner of your cloak. Nearby, a heated argument rages, voices rising and falling in an angry crescendo, clearly concerning a chicken, specifically a stolen chicken. At another table, a man lies slumped, utterly insensible, a wooden ladle still clutched limply in his hand, a testament to his premature surrender to Bacchus. Beneath a rickety table, a scruffy, one-eyed dog aggressively gnaws at a bone, guarding his prize with a territorial snarl, as if he pays his own share of the rent in growls. This, you realize with a mix of trepidation and anticipation, is merely the anteroom to the medieval experience. You've only just crossed the threshold, only just begun to acclimate, and already, the air, the sounds, the very atmosphere, promises a night destined to be either fiercely remembered or, more likely, completely and utterly forgotten by morning. You laugh, a boisterous, uninhibited sound that mingles with the clatter of mugs and the roar of 100 voices. You cheer, a spontaneous eruption for a joke barely heard above the din, or a feat of dubious skill observed across the smoky room. In this swirling vortex of sound and heat, it's easy to forget that much of what unfolds is a grand, improvised play. Because in a medieval tavern, where truth is often as scarce as clean linens, every glib liar can become a legend, provided their tale is seasoned with enough wit and wild improbability. As the night deepens, drawing shadows closer to the flickering hearth, and the ale flows with relentless generosity, a palpable shift occurs in the very fabric of the air. It's a kind of boozy boldness, a loosening of tongues and inhibitions. The bard, having already embarked on his third, increasingly rambling ballad about the tragic romances of unfaithful shepherdesses, hits a particular note of plaintive yearning, and suddenly, everyone in the room, from the grizzled merchant to the blushing maid, is feeling acutely romantic. Welcome, friend, to the untamed landscape of medieval flirting. Subtlety, it would seem, has not just left the building, it was never invited in the first place. It often begins with eye contact, or at least, the attempt at it, often one eye, squinting valiantly through a mead-induced haze, trying to gauge interest across a bench laden with spilled drink. A man, his face a roadmap of hard living and missing most of his teeth, leans precariously across the rough-hewn table, his voice a slurred growl. "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the very hearth itself." His intended, a formidable woman with a glint in her eye, responds by expertly hurling a bread crust that connects with impressive accuracy just above his brow. The room erupts in cheers, a testament to her aim and his audacity. Others, perhaps learning from this dramatic tableau, try their luck more gently, offering refilled mugs with trembling hands, clumsy compliments whispered with hopeful breath, or gallant, if often misguided, offers to help carry a bowl of stew, ostensibly to prevent spills. Spoiler alert, it still spills. If you are a woman in such a place, be you a weary staff member, a visiting guest, or a traveling merchant with wares to protect, you are likely accustomed to gracefully, or not so gracefully, fending off at least 3 would-be poets, 2 overconfident arm wrestlers, and always, one persistent fellow who attempts to impress you by balancing a dangerously sharp knife on his nose. Sometimes, against all odds, it actually works. Usually, however, it ends with a black eye, a bruised ego, or, more prosaically, an empty purse. For those whose intentions run deeper than a passing flirtation, or for those simply seeking a more transactional form of companionship, taverns offered more than just the clumsy dance of courtship. Courtesans, with eyes that saw far more than they revealed, worked the crowded room with practiced ease. They moved through the labyrinth of bodies, a silent radar seeking out who possessed coin, who merely charm, and who would inevitably pass out face-first into their pottage before even making it to the creaky stairs. The initial transactions were often discreet, a shared glance, a whispered word, a fleeting touch. But the implications, oh, those were loud, echoing off the rafters in the tension they created. Jealous lovers, particularly those of the possessive, easily inflamed variety, were a common fixture. Indeed, nothing ignited a tavern brawl faster than a stolen glance held a beat too long, a wandering hand that strayed beyond the bounds of propriety, or a husband catching his wife laughing a little too hard at the bard's particularly bawdy joke about bishops. Tables were overturned with a crash, mugs were swiftly weaponized, and a bench, already mended countless times, would invariably get broken in half again. And yet, amidst this swirling maelstrom of chaos, genuine sparks of connection, tender and unexpected, frequently flew. A shy baker's daughter might find herself laughing with a traveling stonemason over a shared bowl of stew. 2 drunk farmers, united by a mutual, visceral hatred of turnips, would bond for life. A perpetually flustered monk might accidentally flirt with a remarkably unperturbed nun, eliciting gasps and giggles. Love, or at least something remarkably similar, often found a way to survive, even thrive, in the rowdiest, most unlikely corners of the tavern. Because in a medieval tavern, romance, in its broadest sense, was equal parts raw charm, sheer dumb chance, and the paramount ability to not fall face-first into your bowl of mystery stew mid-sentence. You might, just might, win a heart. Or you might, with equal probability, earn a resounding slap across the face. Either way, you were guaranteed to remember it, or at the very least, hear about its wildly exaggerated retelling the next morning. And speaking of sudden developments, the line between passionate flirting and outright fisticuffs was often as thin as the last coin in a pauper's purse. It was bound to happen, really. Perhaps someone spilled a drink, not just a dribble, but a deliberate, provocative splash. Perhaps someone accused someone else of cheating at dice, a grave insult in a place where fortunes were won and lost on the roll. Maybe 2 hulking figures simultaneously claimed the same rickety bench, and neither possessed the humility or the sobriety to back down. Or, and this was often the most reliable catalyst, someone said something particularly impolitic about someone else's mother. Whether the insult was akin to "your mother eats goats" or "your mother cooks bad soup," it truly didn't matter. Suddenly, irrevocably, it was on. The entire tavern, a blur of music and mugs, would turn on a dime, transforming into a chaotic arena. A stool would fly through the air, propelled by unknown forces. A tankard, heavy with ale, would crash to the floor, exploding into shards and splashes. Someone, usually a burly figure whose words were often incoherent, but whose intentions were crystal clear, would bellow, "Hold my bread," before launching themselves over a bench with all the grace and precision of a drunk catapult. No one, absolutely no one, was surprised. In fact, most people didn't even stop drinking, merely shifting their chairs or raising their mugs out of the immediate splash zone. A bar fight in the Middle Ages wasn't a rare occurrence. It was an expected, almost integral, feature of the evening's entertainment. And while it sounds terrifyingly violent, it was usually far more comedic than deadly. People would swing wildly, miss by a comical margin, trip over their own feet, and often land squarely in someone's already half-eaten dinner. Hair was pulled with gusto, beards were grabbed with tenacious fury, and shirts, of dubious quality to begin with, were torn to shreds. The tavern keeper, a hulking presence with the roar of a battlefield general, would wade into the fray, holding a heavy ladle in one hand and a formidable club in the other, more intent on preserving his furniture than punishing the combatants. Occasionally, a completely innocent bystander, fueled by ale and a sudden surge of adrenaline, would join the fight with absolutely no idea why, simply seeing action and leaping in fists first. Others, the more seasoned patrons, would place informal bets, cheer on their preferred combatant, or simply slide their mugs safely out of splash range, treating it all as a spectator sport. Actual weapons were rarely drawn. Most folks knew better. Pulling a blade in a tavern could quickly escalate a casual brawl into a full-blown tavern legend, a bloody stain on the establishment's reputation, and a guaranteed ban from the only place within miles that served hot food and warm ale. Eventually, usually with a grunt and a thud, someone would hit the floor and stay there. Someone else, stumbling backwards, would collide with a wall and decide that was as good a place as any to sit and rethink their entire life. The fight, like a tavern candle burning low, would simply burn itself out. Suddenly, and without ceremony, it was over. And here's the truly strange, almost disarming part. Once it was over, it was genuinely over. The fighters, often bruised and gasping, would be casually separated, mugs would be refilled, someone would invariably strike up a new, often off-key, song, and within 10 minutes, everyone in the tavern would be laughing again, including the unfortunate soul with the newly bleeding nose. There were no lingering grudges, no threats of lawsuits, a concept largely unknown in any case. Just the aches of freshly acquired bruises, a handful of instantly embellished stories, and perhaps a new, often unflattering, nickname like One-Eyed Arnold or Benchbreaker Bill. Because in a medieval tavern, a good, spirited fight wasn't a transgression. It was just another messy, ridiculous, and weirdly bonding part of a good night. As long as no one got hurt too badly, it was simply another round of raucous entertainment. So, the brawl's over. The bard has passed out mid-ballad, his lute clutched protectively to his chest, and your stomach is full of that vaguely unsettling mystery stew and surprisingly potent, slightly fermented cider. It's time to seek sleep, or at least attempt to. But don't, for a moment, expect the silken comfort of a feather bed and lavender-scented linens. This is a medieval tavern, not a spa. If the establishment offers lodging, it's likely found at the top of a creaky, protesting staircase that groans with every ascending step. Upstairs, past slanted floors that defy logic and low-hanging beams designed, it seems, to test the durability of your skull, the rooms await. They are invariably small, perpetually cold, and absolutely, unequivocally shared. Privacy is not a concept that exists here. You find yourself sleeping shoulder to shoulder with strangers, a motley collection of humanity. Some snore with the resounding echo of church bells. Others dream loudly in languages you've never heard, muttering half-formed sentences into the darkness. As for beds, technically, yes, most are straw-stuffed mattresses, thin, lumpy, and crawling with what medieval folks, with a peculiar affection, fondly referred to as companions, a euphemism for fleas, lice, and whatever other tiny creatures decided to share your space for the night. You lay down fully clothed, boots still on, dagger discreetly tucked under your pillow, not for comfort, but as a strategic piece of defensive equipment. Blankets are shared, as are all the lingering smells of the day and night. And if someone had garlic earlier, and someone always has garlic, it will become an intimate, pungent part of your dreams. If you're too poor, or more likely, too utterly drunk for the questionable luxury of a room, you sleep downstairs. Perhaps on a bench, curled uncomfortably under a table, or simply in a corner by the dying embers of the hearth, likely snuggled next to a dog that may or may not belong to the tavern. You'll be stepped on, probably sneezed on, and quite possibly used as a convenient, albeit unconscious, footrest. The tavern never truly quiets. Even after the last mug is drained and the last fight patched up, there's always someone muttering incoherently in their sleep, a log popping and settling in the fireplace, or a distant, echoing fart reverberating through the rafters. And yet, somehow, against all odds, you drift off. It's not comfortable by any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly not clean, but it's safe enough. The fire, even in its dying throes, keeps the worst of the gnawing cold at bay. The tavern keeper, a vigilant sentinel, keeps watch with one eye open and his trusty club ever at hand. And the symphony of human noise, familiar, reassuringly alive, somehow becomes its own peculiar kind of lullaby. You'll wake with a sore neck, a mouth as dry as parchment, and a new, questionably acquired bruise, whose origin you'll never quite pinpoint. But for a few precious hours, you slept in the raw, authentic company of travelers, rogues, farmers, and fools. No kings, no oppressive silence, just the symphony of snoring, the rustle of straw, and the faint, hopeful prayer that your boots are still where you left them come morning. Dawn creeps in, an uninvited guest sliding pale, cold light through the cracks in the wooden shutters and poking at your eyelids with merciless, insistent persistence. The tavern has changed overnight, its boisterous energy replaced by a heavy, defeated sort of quiet. It's not silent, but rather hushed by a collective hangover. You prise open one eye. Someone's muddy boot is resting squarely on your chest. Someone else, huddled in a corner, is mumbling in their sleep about incomprehensible sheep taxes. The bard, still under a table, clutches his precious lute like a long-lost lover. Alone, bold chicken hops across the floorboards, pecking fastidiously at yesterday's discarded bread crusts. No one questions its presence or origin. It simply is. The fire has died down to a few glowing embers, leaving the air cold and thick with stale smoke. A few patrons begin to stir, groaning like wounded warriors recounting battles fought entirely within the skull. One man sits up slowly, surveys the desolate scene, and with a world-weary sigh, lies back down, having silently decided that today, frankly, isn't worth the effort. The tavern keeper, of course, is already up, an indefatigable force of nature. He clatters mugs with practiced efficiency, sweeps straw into fresh, if temporary, piles, and reheats something in a large, bubbling pot on the hearth that smells simultaneously inviting and slightly vengeful. He shoots a withering look at the various bodies sprawled across the floor, then bangs a heavy ladle against a tin mug, a sound that echoes like a morning bell from hell. Up or out is his gruff, unambiguous wake-up call. There is no breakfast buffet here. If you are lucky, there is more pottage now, even thicker and more unidentifiable than last night's offering. Bread is rewarmed, often to the consistency of dried leather. Ale, inevitably, is watered down, and no one, not even the most defiant patron, possesses the strength or inclination to complain. Some of the more hardy souls simply dunk their heads in a barrel of rainwater outside, calling it a form of clean living. You check your pouch, 2 coins and a loose button. Better than expected. Your boots are still here, thank the heavens. One of them has a suspicious bite mark, but they are undeniably yours. A small victory, a small win in the grand scheme of survival. A few new faces begin to trickle in through the heavy door. Early risers, fresh travelers, workers in need of a bracing drink before dealing with the day's inevitable livestock, taxes, or, worse yet, bothersome neighbors. The tavern slowly begins to stir again, like a weary beast reluctantly waking from a troubled sleep. Someone, surprisingly refreshed, starts retelling a story from last night. It has already changed, of course. Now, there were two fights, not one, and the bard's off-key song didn't just entertain, it summoned a full-fledged ghost. Everyone nods knowingly, as if it were gospel truth. The night was a glorious, raucous chaos. The morning is groggy, grimy, and thick with vague regret. And yet, somehow, you find yourself smiling. Because, improbable as it seems, you survived it. By now, you felt the sweat, the clinging smoke, the sticky ale under your boots. You've survived the shouting, the brazen flirting, the barely edible pottage, and quite possibly a flying bench. And through all that, one thing has become profoundly clear. The medieval tavern wasn't just a simple drinking hole. It was the vital, beating heart of the entire community, a pulsing nexus of life in a world starved for connection. In an age utterly devoid of phones, newspapers, or any form of social network, the tavern was the undisputed crucible where news traveled. A merchant arriving from the coast could share tantalizing gossip from a foreign port, igniting imaginations with tales of distant lands. A grizzled soldier could vividly describe the horrors and triumphs of war directly from the front lines, painting pictures more powerful than any scroll. A bard, even a half-drunk one, could sing songs that effortlessly stitched people together, weaving shared emotions, even if the lyrics, as was often the case, changed nightly to suit the mood or the memory. This was, above all else, a place for genuine, unfiltered connection. Farmers drank elbow to elbow with skilled craftsmen. Weary pilgrims shared their bread with cunning thieves. Strangers, by the second round of ale, quickly became fast friends, or at least fiercely loyal drinking buddies. Here, the rigid boundaries of social classes blurred into a convivial haze. Rumors, both mundane and sensational, were born and spread like wildfire. Alliances, both personal and professional, were forged with a handshake and a shared mug. Grudges, too, were either ceremoniously buried or passionately fueled further, depending entirely on how the dice rolled or whose temper was shorter. The tavern was also where serious business happened, deals made and contracts, often unwritten, shaken over splintered tables and rivers of spilled cider. It was a court for settling minor disputes, as if you laugh, you cheer, the initial shyness melting away like butter near the hearth. Here, within these smoky walls, it's easy to forget that the outside world exists, or that any of this is merely an escape. In a medieval tavern, the line between truth and tall tale blurs into oblivion, and every glib liar is a legend in the making, provided their story possesses enough fire to warm the ale-soaked ears of the crowd. As the night deepens, becoming a velvet cloak stitched with torchlight and shadow, the ale flows with relentless generosity. A subtle alchemy begins in the air, a transformation from weary sobriety to a kind of boozy boldness, a collective loosening of inhibitions. The bard, his face flushed and his lute clutched like a long-lost love, is halfway through his third bawdy ballad about unfaithful shepherdesses and their suspiciously fertile flocks. Suddenly, an inexplicable wave of romance sweeps through the room, stirring hearts and emboldening tongues. Welcome, truly, to medieval flirting, an art form where subtlety has not merely left the building. It was never invited in the first place. It often begins with eye contact, or at least one eye, squinting valiantly through the mead-induced haze that coats the senses. Across a scarred wooden bench, a man whose smile boasts only two remaining teeth leans in, his breath a potent blend of onion and cheap spirits. He slurs, with all the grace of a stumbling ox, "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the hearth." The woman, a formidable presence with hands clearly accustomed to hard work, doesn't miss a beat. Her response is swift and precise, a hardened bread crust, hurled with surprising accuracy, thuds against his forehead. The room erupts in cheers, a testament to the theatrical flair of the moment. Others, perhaps learning from his immediate failure, try their luck more gently, offering refilled mugs, a stream of clumsy compliments. Your hair is brown, like a good stew. Or even offers to help carry a precarious bowl of stew so it doesn't spill. Spoiler alert, it still spills, usually onto their own boots. If you happen to be a woman in this boisterous den, whether a tavern staff, a paying guest, or a traveling merchant hawking wares, you're likely well-practiced in fending off at least 3 earnest, albeit misguided, poets, 2 overly confident arm wrestlers, and 1 particularly determined man attempting to impress you by balancing a rusty knife on his nose. Sometimes, against all odds, it actually works. More often, it ends with a souvenir black eye or, just as frequently, an entirely empty purse. Yet, beyond the crude overtures and the theatrical rejections, taverns offer more than just clumsy flirting for those genuinely seeking companionship. Courtesans, with their knowing glances and practiced ease, glide through the crowded room, a delicate dance of assessment. They know instinctively who has coin jingling in their pouch, who possesses enough charm to be worth the effort, and who will undoubtedly pass out face first into a puddle of ale before even making it to the creaky stairs. Transactions are rarely spoken, instead communicated through a flick of the wrist, a whispered word, a significant nod, discreet enough to maintain deniability, but the implications resonate loudly through the smoky air. And where there's intimacy, however fleeting or transactional, there are also jealous lovers. Oh yes, nothing ignites a tavern brawl faster or more fiercely than a stolen glance held a fraction too long, a wandering hand that dares to linger, or a husband catching his wife laughing just a little too hard at the bard's risque joke about bishops and their peculiar habits. A hush falls, then a shout. Tables are overturned with a resounding crash. Mugs, once vessels of merriment, become improvised weapons, flying through the air. A bench, already scarred from countless previous skirmishes, groans and breaks in half again. And yet, amidst this swirling vortex of chaos and petty grievances, genuine sparks, however improbable, manage to fly. A shy baker's daughter and a gruff traveling stonemason might find themselves laughing over a shared bowl of stew, their fingers brushing accidentally. 2 drunk farmers might forge an unbreakable bond over their mutual, fervent hatred of turnips. A monk, perhaps indulging a bit too freely, might accidentally find himself flirting with a nun, their eyes meeting in a moment of startled, forbidden amusement. Love, or at least some form of human connection, proves itself stubbornly resilient, surviving and even thriving in the rowdiest, most unexpected corners of the tavern. Because in the medieval tavern, romance is a precarious cocktail, equal parts fleeting charm, fickle chance, and the crucial ability to not fall face first into your stew mid-sentence. You might, just might, win a heart with your wit or your clumsy charm. Or, just as likely, you might earn a sharp slap across the cheek. Either way, you're bound to remember it. Or at the very least, you'll hear all about it, embellished and exaggerated, the next morning. The shift from revelry to riot is often swift and surprisingly arbitrary. It was bound to happen eventually. The air had been thick with it. Perhaps someone accidentally spilled a drink on an irritable stranger. Maybe a heated argument erupted over who cheated at dice. 2 burly men might have simultaneously claimed the same prime bench, neither willing to back down. Or, most dangerously of all, someone might have uttered a poorly chosen word about someone else's mother, or their goat, or their dubious soup recipe. It doesn't really matter which trivial spark ignites the fuse. Suddenly, without warning, the entire tavern is on. And yet, the irony of history proved both profound and poetic. For someone so deliberately erased, Nefertiti's fame would not only resurrect her image but elevate it to unprecedented heights. It was in the relentless, global quest for her stepson, Tutankhamun, the boy king, that the world stumbled upon her story, a shadow stretching from his golden legacy. For a woman who stood at the absolute epicenter of Egypt's most radical, transformative era, a queen, a high priestess, a consort who may have even reigned as pharaoh in her own right, Nefertiti left behind an astonishing void, no confirmed tomb. Not a single stone monument explicitly bears the rites of her death, no sarcophagus inscribed with her name, no shimmering funerary mask to guide her passage, no quiet inscription whispering her final words to the gods. It is as if, despite her immense power and undeniable presence, she simply evaporated from the historical record. This haunting absence has plagued and fascinated Egyptologists for well over a century. In a culture utterly obsessed with the afterlife, where every noble, every dignitary, every ruler was meticulously embalmed, elaborately mummified, and ceremoniously buried with intricate instructions for the soul's perilous journey, how could one of the most powerful and visibly present women in all of Egyptian history seemingly vanish without a trace? Theories, naturally, abound, each more captivating than the last. One plausible possibility suggests she was buried hastily, perhaps even clandestinely, and certainly without the grand ceremonies befitting her station during the turbulent, waning years of the Amarna period. Perhaps her radical legacy, so intertwined with Akhenaten's controversial monotheistic revolution, made her a dangerous figure in the eyes of the new, traditionalist regime. In this scenario, her tomb may have been purposefully dismantled, her very name defaced from cartouches, all part of a sweeping, vengeful effort to systematically erase the memory of Akhenaten's heresy and the entire Amarna experiment. After all, the return to the ancient, traditional gods was swift and often brutally enforced, and vengeance carved in stone, a deliberate defacement of hieroglyphs, was a common practice, a way to condemn a soul to eternal oblivion. Another, far more tantalizing theory, whispered with bated breath in archaeological circles, suggests her tomb was never truly lost at all. It was simply misidentified, perhaps even deliberately obscured, or remains hidden in plain sight. Some intrepid researchers, driven by an almost romantic pursuit, have proposed that she lies within the sacred confines of the Valley of the Kings itself, concealed behind the very walls of her stepson Tutankhamun's tomb. This theory gained explosive traction in 2015 when radar scans of KV-62, the famed resting place of King Tut, indicated possible hidden chambers, tantalizing voids behind the painted plaster. Was Nefertiti, the beautiful and enigmatic queen, buried mere inches away from her successor, sealed off and forgotten beneath layers of history and untold gold? That electrifying idea captured the world's imagination, conjuring visions of a legendary queen sleeping just beyond reach, a hidden treasure not of gold, but of untold stories. Egyptologists across the globe held their breath, poised on the edge of a monumental discovery. But alas, further, more precise scans yielded frustratingly inconclusive results. The initial feverish excitement cooled, excavations slowed to a crawl, and crucial funding for such a speculative project gradually dried up. Once again, Nefertiti, the elusive queen, retreated into the captivating embrace of myth. Yet, despite this physical absence, her presence is undeniably loud, reverberating across millennia. We possess her images, dozens, perhaps even hundreds, her striking likeness captured forever in polished stone and vibrant pigment. Her most iconic bust, now famously housed in Berlin, still gazes with an almost unfathomable grace across museum glass, her exquisite features radiating a knowing serenity, as if she possesses a secret truth we can never grasp, as if she is patiently waiting for the right moment, or perhaps the right person, to reveal it. Every year, new digs continue with painstaking meticulousness in Amarna, her ephemeral city, and across the vast Valley of the Kings. And every year, tantalizing whispers stir, fueled by the hope that a newly sealed chamber might finally give up her secrets. Could a forgotten cartouche or a forgotten name etched in ancient sand spell out her true name, her final resting place? Or is she destined to remain the eternal riddle, an unfinished sentence in the sprawling, majestic story of Egypt, a question mark etched onto the very fabric of time? If history truly tried to bury her, it certainly didn't succeed for long, because the search for Nefertiti never truly stopped. In fact, it only deepened, becoming an obsession. If her tomb was never definitively found, and her body never positively identified, why then do we still remember Nefertiti with such unwavering clarity, such profound fascination? The answer, for many, sits behind thick museum glass, bathed in soft, reverent lights within Berlin's Neues Museum, a painted limestone sculpture that has captivated the world since its rediscovery in 1912. It is, of course, the bust of Nefertiti. She gazes forward with an astonishing poise and an almost ethereal serenity. Her long, elegant neck is impossibly graceful, her distinct blue crown a statement of royalty, and her features so exquisitely refined, so perfectly symmetrical, they almost feel strikingly modern, transcending the thousands of years that separate us. One eye remains unfinished, a subtle enigma, perhaps intentionally left that way by the master sculptor, a deliberate artistic choice, or perhaps merely a forgotten detail during the workshop's final, frantic days. Yet, even incomplete, she is undeniably timeless, absolutely unforgettable, her silent gaze holding an entire universe of unspoken stories. The bust was unearthed by the meticulous German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt in the crumbling ruins of the sculptor Thutmose's studio at Amarna. The moment he brushed away the accumulating dust and revealed her face, emerging from the millennia of slumber, he knew instantly what unparalleled treasure he had found. In his diary, with an almost overwhelmed brevity, he famously wrote, "No use describing it. You have to see it." And once the world did see it, once her image was disseminated globally through photographs and reproductions, Nefertiti transcended being merely a historical figure. She became a global symbol of beauty, of regal power, and of the enduring enigma of the ancient world, her face instantly recognizable even to those unfamiliar with Egyptian history. But even her iconic bust is not without its own deep-seated controversy, adding another layer to her already complex narrative. Germany acquired the artifact during an era characterized by loose antiquities laws, a time when cultural treasures could be purchased and exported with relative ease. For decades now, Egypt has been steadfastly, passionately requesting its return, asserting its rightful place in the land of its origin. To the Egyptians, she undeniably belongs home, in the very land whose sun once touched her skin, where she stood beneath the Aten's life-giving rays. But Germany, with equal resolve, has consistently refused, citing her extreme fragility, claiming the bust is too delicate, too vulnerable to safely travel. Other, more cynical voices suggest the refusal is less about preservation and more about prestige, about the undeniable drawing power of a global icon. Nefertiti, after all, brings in millions of visitors. She is, for many, their Mona Lisa, a priceless cultural magnet. Still, her powerful presence, wherever she may ultimately reside, has irrevocably altered how the modern world perceives ancient women. She wasn't just a passive beauty, a mere ornament. Her bust captures something fiercely regal, profoundly assertive, almost challenging in its quiet confidence. She looks like a woman who not only held profound secrets, but made momentous decisions, a queen capable of changing the very course of empires. And by all accounts, she did. It is truly remarkable, almost miraculous, how a single sculpture, delicate and silent, can resurrect someone so lost to the relentless march of time, breathing life into a forgotten name. We may indeed never locate her elusive tomb. We may never definitively know the circumstances of her death, the final chapter of her earthly existence. But through this singular, magnificent bust, Nefertiti achieved something truly extraordinary, something beyond the reach of pharaohs themselves. She became immortal, not encased in gold or preserved through mummification, but indelibly etched into the enduring canvas of human memory. The face may be still, frozen in limestone, but the story it tells, the questions it provokes, that continues to speak louder than ever across the centuries, a resonant echo that refuses to fade. Nefertiti's true story, therefore, lives somewhere between the unyielding stone and the vast, echoing silence, between what fragmented facts we manage to unearth and what boundless narratives we desperately want to believe. Few figures in the entirety of ancient history have inspired such relentless fascination, such profound and enduring mystery. She is, in every sense, a paradox. One of the most vividly documented women of her time, her face and form appearing in countless reliefs and sculptures, and yet, simultaneously, still largely unknowable, an enigma wrapped in an enigma. Over the centuries, her identity and role have been imagined in myriad ways, each interpretation a reflection of the era attempting to understand her. To some, she was a goddess in human form, the living embodiment of divine beauty, a physical manifestation of heavenly grace. To others, she was a shrewd political mastermind, the formidable power behind Akhenaten's revolutionary throne, perhaps even the actual throne itself, subtly guiding the reins of empire. Some historians and romantics have portrayed her as a tragic figure, a passionate romantic queen tragically lost amidst the brutal sands of a religious and political revolution. Still others paint her as intensely ambitious, perhaps even ruthless, navigating a collapsing empire with an almost terrifying elegance and icy calculation. But what, amid all this captivating speculation, do we truly know? We know, with certainty, that she was far, far more than simply a royal wife, a mere consort. Her regal imagery, bold and unyielding, often rivals that of kings, depicting her in poses typically reserved for male pharaohs. Her visible presence during crucial religious rites, grand royal ceremonies, and even graphic scenes of battle and triumph reveals a woman not merely beside power, but actively, overtly wielding it. In a rigidly patriarchal world, one dominated by male authority, she carved out her own expansive space, not through open rebellion or defiance, but through sheer, undeniable presence, through an unwavering poise, and through her masterful command of the visual and spiritual language of her turbulent time. She was a force to be reckoned with. We know she was absolutely central to one of history's boldest, most audacious religious shifts. While Akhenaten may have initially envisioned the monotheistic sun cult of the Aten, conceptualizing its theological framework, it was Nefertiti who exquisitely embodied it, giving it a tangible, human face. She was the living, breathing manifestation of a divine ideal, the radiant bridge between the Aten above and the yearning people below. She didn't merely serve the gods, she was their image, a living icon of the divine on earth. And, tragically, we know that after her mysterious disappearance, her very memory was almost entirely erased, a chilling testament to her radical impact. The fierce backlash against Akhenaten's regime, a furious reassertion of traditional order, swept her name into deliberate oblivion. Her magnificent statues were systematically smashed, her carefully carved inscriptions defaced, her pivotal role in history intentionally buried, condemned to silence. Yet, here we are, over 3,000 years later, still whispering her name, still captivated by her story, still actively searching. Why? Perhaps it is because myth, that powerful, intangible force, has a profound way of surviving precisely where cold, hard facts cannot. Perhaps it is because when a woman becomes simultaneously both an iconic figure and an enduring enigma, she slips into a unique, ethereal space where the relentless march of time simply cannot reach her. Perhaps it is because, sometimes, the profound, unanswered questions echo far louder and resonate far deeper than any definitive answers ever could. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how Nefertiti wanted it to be. To be remembered, yes, but never fully explained, never definitively categorized. To be admired, revered, but never contained, never fully understood. To live forever, not as a woman confined to one tomb, however grand, but as a queen of endless, tantalizing speculation, an eternal, beautiful mystery. More than 3 millennia have gracefully passed since Nefertiti last walked beneath Egypt's blazing sun, her form casting a fleeting shadow on the ancient sands. Yet, her indelible shadow still stretches across our modern world, etched in the reflective glass of museum displays, whispered through the hushed academic halls of universities, splashed across the vibrant pages of historical novels, and brought to life on the flickering screens of countless documentaries. Unlike the vast majority of historical figures, who inevitably fade into the distant, dusty past, Nefertiti, if anything, only grows larger, more resonant, with the relentless march of time. There is something utterly irresistible about her, a magnetic allure that extends far beyond mere physical beauty, and we, as humanity, have certainly seen beauty before. It is the profound, tantalizing mystery that truly captivates. The deliberate, unsettling blank spaces in her biography feel less like forgotten details and more like a challenge, a subtle taunt, as if she is daring us, across the centuries, to try and truly understand her, knowing full well that we never truly will. And in that unique, inexplicable way, she has become something far more than merely historical. She has become archetypal, a fundamental pattern in the human consciousness. Every new generation, it seems, reinterprets Nefertiti, bending her image to fit its own collective needs and desires. In the early 20th century, amidst the fervor of colonial discovery, she was often in a world of fleeting moments and forgotten names. The irony of Nefertiti's story is breathtakingly profound. Her own king, Akhenaten, had sought to dismantle the old gods, and in the turbulent aftermath, her memory was swept into the historical dustbin. And yet, it was the rediscovery of another, much younger king, Tutankhamun, that would unexpectedly resurrect her image from the abyss. As the world clamored for his gilded saga, it inadvertently stumbled upon hers, a tantalizing whisper from the very heart of Egypt's most radical, most audacious era. Nefertiti, a queen, a priestess, perhaps even a pharaoh in her own right, stood at the epicenter of this seismic shift. Yet, for someone so undeniably powerful, she left behind no confirmed tomb. Not a single monument proclaims her death rites. No sarcophagus bears her likeness in eternal sleep. No funerary mask offers a final, regal gaze, and no inscription whispers her last words to the gods. It is as if, in a puff of ancient desert air, she simply evaporated. This profound absence has haunted Egyptologists for over a century. In a civilization obsessed with the afterlife, where every noble was meticulously embalmed, mummified, and buried with an intricate roadmap for the soul's journey, how could one of the most commanding women in Egyptian history vanish without a trace? Theories, as abundant as grains of sand, attempt to fill this colossal void. One possibility suggests she met a hasty, unceremonious end during the chaotic twilight years of the Amarna period. Perhaps her radical legacy, so intertwined with Akhenaten's controversial monotheism, made her a dangerous figure in the eyes of the new regime, eager to restore the old pantheon. Her tomb, if it ever existed in grand form, may have been systematically dismantled, her name ruthlessly defaced, all part of a sweeping, vengeful effort to erase the very memory of Akhenaten's heresy. After all, the return to traditional gods was swift and brutal, and vengeance carved in stone hieroglyphs was a chillingly common practice. Another, far more tantalizing theory posits that her tomb was never truly lost. It was merely misidentified, or perhaps still waits in plain sight, exquisitely hidden. Some daring researchers have proposed that Nefertiti lies within the sacred confines of the Valley of the Kings itself, possibly concealed behind the very walls of Tutankhamun's own resting place. In 2015, radar scans of KV-62, the famed tomb of King Tut, ignited a global frenzy with indications of possible hidden chambers. Was Nefertiti, the legendary queen, buried just inches away, sealed off and forgotten beneath millennia of history and gold? That breathtaking idea captured the world's imagination, a sleeping queen just beyond reach, a whispered secret trapped in stone. Egyptologists held their breath, but subsequent scans yielded frustratingly inconclusive results. The initial excitement waned, excavation slowed, and funding, as it often does, eventually dried up. Once again, Nefertiti retreated into the realm of myth, a ghost in the desert. Yet, despite the silence of her supposed tomb, her absence is thunderous. We have her images, dozens, perhaps hundreds, her likeness captured with astonishing fidelity in stone and pigment. Her iconic bust, now residing in Berlin, still gazes with an unfathomable, almost knowing grace across museum glass, as if she possesses a secret we desperately seek, as if she is patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Every year, new excavations continue in Amarna and the Valley of the Kings, and with each turning of the earth, whispers stir anew. Could a sealed chamber finally surrender her secrets? Could a discarded scroll or a forgotten inscription at last spell out her true name, her final resting place? Or is she destined to remain the eternal riddle, an unfinished sentence in the grand narrative of Egypt, forever beckoning us deeper into her enigma? If history attempted to bury her, it did not succeed for long. The search for Nefertiti never truly stopped. It only deepened, transforming from a quest for a physical tomb into a profound exploration of memory and identity. If her tomb was never definitively found and her body never formally identified, why do we still remember Nefertiti with such fervor? The answer, ironically, sits not in a burial chamber, but behind museum glass, bathed in soft lights, in Berlin's Neues Museum, a painted limestone sculpture that has captivated the world since its rediscovery in 1912. The bust of Nefertiti. She gazes forward with an arresting poise and serenity. Her long, elegant neck rises gracefully, supporting a distinctive blue crown adorned with a cobra. Her features are so exquisitely refined, so perfectly balanced, they almost feel modern, transcending the millennia that separate us. One eye is famously unfinished, perhaps left that way intentionally by the sculptor, or perhaps a forgotten detail in the workshop's final, hurried days. Yet, even incomplete, she is timeless, unforgettable, radiating an aura of quiet power that defies the very notion of imperfection. The bust was unearthed by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt in the ruins of the sculptor Thutmose's studio at Amarna. The moment he brushed away the accumulated dust of ages and revealed her face, he knew instantly what unparalleled treasure he had found. In his diary, he scribbled a now famous entry, a testament to her overwhelming beauty. No use describing it. You have to see it. And once the world did see it, once her image was disseminated through photographs and reproductions, Nefertiti became more than just a historical figure. She transformed into a global symbol of classical beauty, of enduring power, and of the enigmatic allure of the ancient past. But even her bust, a silent testament to her splendor, is not without controversy. Germany acquired the artifact during a period of notoriously loose antiquities laws, and Egypt has been steadfastly requesting its repatriation for decades. To the Egyptians, she belongs unequivocally home, in the land whose sun once touched her skin, where she stood beneath the Aten's fervent rays. They see her as an integral part of their national heritage, a queen torn from her kingdom. Germany, however, has consistently refused, claiming her fragility makes her unsafe to travel, a delicate treasure too precious to risk. Others argue the true reason is more pragmatic: prestige. Nefertiti is a magnetic draw, bringing in throngs of visitors. She is, after all, their Mona Lisa, a masterpiece that defines an entire museum. Still, her powerful presence, wherever she may be displayed, has irrevocably changed how the world perceives ancient women. She wasn't just a passive beauty, a docile queen in the shadow of a king. Her bust captures something inherently regal, assertive, almost challenging in its gaze. She looks like someone who held profound secrets, made pivotal decisions, and irrevocably changed the course of empires. And she did. It's truly remarkable how a single sculpture, delicate and silent, can resurrect someone so utterly lost to time. We may never unearth her tomb. We may never definitively know how she died. But through this singular, magnificent bust, Nefertiti achieved something truly extraordinary. She became immortal, not in gold and precious stones within a sealed sarcophagus, but in the boundless realm of human memory. The face may be still, frozen in time, but the story it tells continues to speak louder than ever, echoing across the centuries. Nefertiti's story lives in that liminal space between stone and silence, between what we definitively know and what we desperately want to believe. Few figures in ancient history have inspired such relentless fascination and such profound, enduring mystery. She is a beautiful paradox, one of the most visually documented women of her time, and yet still largely unknowable in her true essence. Over the centuries, she's been imagined and reimagined in countless forms. To some, she was a goddess in human form, the living embodiment of divine beauty and grace, a queen who walked among mortals. To others, she was a shrewd political mastermind, the formidable force behind Akhenaten's radical throne, perhaps even the true power of the throne itself. Some narratives portray her as a tragic romantic figure, tragically lost in the turbulent sands of revolution and upheaval. Others paint her as ambitious, even ruthlessly calculating, navigating a collapsing empire with an icy elegance and strategic precision. But what do we truly, concretely know? We know she was far more than merely a royal wife. Her iconic imagery rivals that of kings, depicting her in poses and contexts traditionally reserved for male pharaohs. Her unmistakable presence during sacred religious rites, grand royal ceremonies, and even stylized scenes of battle reveals a woman not just standing passively beside power, but actively, overtly wielding it. In a fiercely patriarchal world, she carved out her own monumental space, not through outright rebellion, but through an undeniable presence, an unwavering poise, and a sheer command of the visual and spiritual language of her time. We know she was absolutely central to one of history's boldest and most audacious religious shifts. While Akhenaten may have initially envisioned the monotheistic sun cult of Aten, it was Nefertiti who embodied it, giving it a tangible, relatable form. She was the human face of a divine ideal, the radiant bridge between the Aten above and the people below. She didn't merely serve the gods. She was, for all intents and purposes, their living, breathing image. And tragically, we know that after her mysterious disappearance, her memory was almost completely erased. The violent backlash against Akhenaten's regime swept her name into intentional oblivion. Her magnificent statues were systematically smashed. Her inscriptions were painstakingly defaced. Her monumental role in history was deliberately buried beneath layers of political retribution. Yet here we are, over 3,000 years later, still whispering her name, still captivated by her story. Why? Because myth, untethered by inconvenient facts, possesses an uncanny way of surviving where rigid history cannot. Because when a woman becomes both an undeniable icon and an impenetrable enigma, she slips into a rare, timeless space where the ravages of time cannot reach her. Because sometimes, the questions we ask echo louder, more compellingly, than any definitive answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's precisely how Nefertiti wanted it. To be remembered, not exhaustively explained. To be admired, not definitively contained. To live forever, not as a woman confined to one tomb, but as a queen of endless, captivating speculation. More than 3 millennia have passed since Nefertiti last walked beneath Egypt's blazing sun. Yet her indelible shadow still stretches across our modern world, etched into museum glass, whispered through hushed academic halls, splashed across the pages of countless novels, and brought to vivid life on documentary screens. Unlike most historical figures, whose legacies often fade into the distant past, she hasn't diminished. If anything, she seems to grow larger, more commanding, with each passing century. There's something utterly irresistible about her, and it's not just her renowned beauty. We've seen beauty before. It's the profound, deliberate mystery. The tantalizing blank spaces in her biography feel less like omissions and more like a challenge, a subtle taunt, as if she's daring us to try and fully comprehend her, knowing full well we never truly will. And in that unique way, she's become something more than merely historical. She's become archetypal. Every successive generation reinterprets Nefertiti in its own image, reflecting its hopes, its fears, and its evolving understanding of power and femininity. In the early 20th century, she was often portrayed as an exotic, mysterious queen, a somewhat submissive figure. During the vibrant feminist wave, she was reclaimed as a potent symbol of female power, an ancient ruler lost to patriarchal erasure. In modern media, she's a compelling style icon, an African queen, a cunning political player, and even a possible pharaoh, forever just out of reach. She has lived 1,000 second lives, not through verifiable facts, but through the boundless, ever-evolving power of imagination. But perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, that is the most fitting afterlife of all. In ancient Egypt, immortality wasn't solely about meticulous mummification or elaborate burial rituals. It was fundamentally about memory. If your name was still spoken, your image still seen, your story still retold, you lived on. You could travel the fabled field of reeds, dine with the gods, exist triumphantly beyond the veil of death. Nefertiti, whether by meticulous design or by extraordinary chance, has achieved precisely that. Her name is spoken with reverence and wonder across continents. Her face is undeniably one of the most recognized in all of human history. Her story, though fractured and incomplete, still commands unwavering attention. So, in a profound way, her greatest legacy was not carved into a magnificent tomb or sealed beneath layers of desert stone. It was this enduring curiosity. She left behind a perfect mystery, a life half seen, half erased, and wholly, utterly unforgettable. And perhaps that was her final, most potent act of power. Not just to rule an empire, not just to reshape a religion, or to raise royal daughters, but to transcend time itself and become immortal. Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, never truly left. She remains here, vibrantly alive in our questions, in our wonder, and in our collective need to remember the powerful women history tried so hard to forget. She lives not in gold or glory, but in the eternal, compelling act of being searched for. And what, truly, is more immortal than that? China, where the clouds hang low and the wind hums an ancient tune through bamboo groves, a dragon lies coiled. But it is no myth, no fire-breathing beast of legend conjured from ancient scrolls. This dragon is made of earth and stone, sculpted by centuries of calloused hands and unwavering, patient vision. It is the Longji rice terraces, known to locals with profound reverence as the dragon's backbone. And its breathtaking curves ripple across the mountainside like shimmering scales, alive with the dance of water, the promise of rice, and the quiet pride of generations. From a distant vantage point, the terraces resemble a colossal, slumbering creature, its mighty spine stretching for miles. Hills ripple with rhythmic, almost hypnotic precision, each verdant layer rising and falling like the sinews of a living, breathing form. But step closer, and you'll discover something even more alive, more intricate. Water flows in soft, melodic whispers along carefully dug channels, a ceaseless, gentle symphony. Tender seedlings flutter almost imperceptibly in the breeze, miniature flags of hope. And at dawn, when the morning mist drapes the landscape like a silken shroud, it seems like breath, ethereal and profound, rising from the dragon's very nostrils. These magnificent terraces were not built in haste, nor by imperial decree. Their story began over 700 years ago, when the Zhuang and Yao people, ethnic minorities with deep, ancestral ties to these unforgiving mountains, faced a stark choice: abandon their ancestral lands or learn to tame the daunting slopes. Flat land was a precious commodity, almost non-existent. Machinery, of course, was a futuristic fantasy. And so, They looked to the towering mountain and asked a simple, yet profoundly difficult question. How do we feed ourselves here, on this steep, rocky incline? The answer was not found in a single season or by a single generation. It took centuries. Armed with little more than rudimentary stone tools, sturdy wooden shovels, and simple bamboo baskets carried on weary backs, they began carving the hills, inch by painstaking inch, year by arduous year. With each new level built, each retaining wall meticulously stacked, they did more than just shape the land. They taught it, miraculously, to breathe with them. Rainfall, once a destructive force, became a precious resource. A steep, barren slope became the very sustenance of life. Rice, the absolute staple, began to grow where gravity once reigned supreme. And over the long, slow march of time, the terraces began to resemble a dragon in repose, strong, eternal, sacred. This was far more than mere agriculture. It was a profound act of harmony, a silent, enduring pact between humans and the earth. No part of the mountain was wasted, and no part was brutally forced to bend to human will. Instead, the people worked with the earth, shaping it in gentle curves and swells, listening to the wind's wisdom, following the water's natural course. Today, the dragon's backbone still feeds entire villages, a testament to its enduring design. But more than that, it reminds us what unwavering patience, tenacious will, and profound respect for nature can truly build. In a world relentlessly racing forward, here lies a dragon that was never chased, never conquered, only carved. Layer by painstaking layer, dream by resilient dream. To walk among the lonely rice terraces is to step into a world carved by sheer, unyielding persistence. There is no illusion here, no deceptive trickery. You won't find machine tracks scarring the earth or corporate survey markers dictating the future. What stretches across these mountains are the unmistakable fingerprints of human endurance, writ large in stone and soil. Every gentle curve, every meticulously engineered slope, every shimmering drop of water has been arranged, stone by painstaking stone, by hands that knew the very pulse of the land, that understood its rhythms intimately. Centuries ago, when the Zhuang and Yao peoples first looked upon these steep, unforgiving hillsides, they did not perceive insurmountable obstacles. They saw possibility, opportunity. The fertile lowlands were already claimed, the valleys already sown with crops. But up here, amid the rugged, cloud-kissed peaks, there was space, there was potential. If only they could make the earth listen, truly listen, to their needs. With no heavy tools, they began with the most basic implements: wooden shovels, stone hoes, and baskets brimming with mud and rubble carried on backs worn smooth by time and labor. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, terraces began to form, horizontal veins across the mountain's rugged face, held steadfastly in place by hand-stacked stone walls that were works of art in themselves. These were not accidental cuts into the slope. They were calculated, precise. Each level had to be perfectly balanced, not only to hold water without bursting its banks, but to efficiently carry it from one tier to the next without a single drop wasted. One miscalculation, one error in gradient, could cause an entire section to collapse, undoing years of work. Too steep, and the precious water would rush away, eroding the soil. Too flat, and it would stagnate, breeding disease and failing to nourish the rice. So they measured not with rulers or protractors, but with generations of accrued intuition, with an innate understanding of the mountain's temperament. Children learned by watching their elders. Elders, in turn, diligently watched the subtle shifts of the seasons, the patterns of rainfall. And the mountain, in its own good time, gave in, not with a forced surrender, but with a profound, quiet trust. The result is a landscape that defies nature by gracefully flowing with it. From the verdant valley base to the ethereal, cloud-kissed peaks, these terraces rise like a magnificent spiral staircase reaching for the sky. They mirror the topography with an almost unbelievable elegance, almost as if the mountain itself grew them organically. But no, the mountain did not shape these breathtaking curves. Humans did. With no engines, no reinforced concrete, no architectural degrees, just the relentless march of time, just countless cycles of trial and error, just the unshakable belief that land, no matter how steep or challenging, can be made to serve life. Today, the terraces remain vibrantly functional, still farmed with dedication, still meticulously repaired, still profoundly respected. No bulldozers rumble through here, no shortcuts are taken. The old ways survive not because they stubbornly resist the future, but because they proved something rare and powerful. That tradition, when rooted deep enough in necessity and harmony, can outlast every storm, every passing trend, every modern upheaval. If the dragon's backbone is conceived as muscle and bone, then water is undeniably its very blood, its life force. It flows quietly, ceaselessly, without the aid of pumps or engines, tracing ancient, intricate channels that slip from mountaintop springs and cascade into every single terrace below. This hydraulic choreography is no accident. It is the secret, living heart of the terraces, the ingenious reason they have endured, sustained and vibrant, for centuries. At the highest reaches of the mountain, rainwater and natural springs are meticulously caught in narrow ditches and carefully crafted earthen canals. From there, gravity, the farmer's silent and most powerful ally, takes over. The water descends through terrace after terraced field, pooling gently and evenly in each before spilling, with a soft, liquid sigh, into the next. This intricate design, fluid and seemingly seamless, ensures that every patch of rice receives precisely what it needs. No more, no less. There are no complex valves, no modern switches. Control lies in subtle gates made of humble stone or sturdy wood, adjusted by hand and by generations of ingrained habit. If one terrace overflows, it could potentially flood the one below, ruining the crop. If one leaks, a drought may follow, threatening the entire system. And so the villagers, the tireless guardians of this delicate, living system, walk the narrow ridges daily, checking, adjusting, listening intently to the nuanced sound of the flowing water. It's less like farming and more like playing a complex, delicate instrument. One wrong note, one slight miscalculation, and the whole song is off. But the water does more than just feed the rice. It mirrors the sky, acting as a profound, reflective canvas. In spring, when the terraces are first flooded and prepared for planting, the paddies transform into vast, shimmering sheets of glass. They reflect the vast expanse of clouds, the brilliant sun, and even the myriad stars on a clear night. Visitors often describe the sight as surreal, otherworldly, like the mountain itself has become a living, breathing mirror, reflecting both heaven and earth in stunning harmony. Then comes summer. The water thickens and darkens with the vigorous growth of green rice stalks. The ethereal reflection fades, replaced by vibrant movement, rippling rice plants swaying gently in the wind like an emerald sea, alive and breathing. In autumn, the water glistens through the rich, golden hues of the ripened grain, anticipating the harvest. And in winter, when farming ceases and the fields lie fallow, snow and frost replace the flowing current. The dragon sleeps, a quiet, white silhouette, but the intricate channels remain, silent veins awaiting the awakening of spring. Time moves differently here, not by the relentless ticking of hours, but by the subtle measure of moisture, by the first trickle of mountain thaw, by the returning chorus of frogs, by the rich, earthy scent of wet soil after a rain. In a world that feverishly measures time in seconds and microseconds, the people of Longji still measure it in the grand sweep of seasons and the meticulous count of individual drops. And so, the dragon lives not in fiery breath and soaring flight, but in the gentle ripples of water, pulsing quietly through a living masterpiece of stone and soil. Spring in the Longji Mountains begins not with the vibrant burst of blossoms, but with the subtle, life-giving flow of water. As the last vestiges of snow melt in the higher peaks, countless streams trickle downward, a delicate network of veins breathing life into the waiting terraces. The mirror-like patties, having slept through winter, are now ready, gleaming like polished jade. The dragon stirs, awakening slowly, and the people prepare for the ancient ritual that ties them inextricably to every generation that came before them, planting the first, precious seed. There is no grand announcement, no fanfare, only quiet, purposeful movement. Farmers, young and old, rise with the morning mist. They walk barefoot along the narrow, often slippery ridges, straw hats pulled low over their eyes, baskets perfectly balanced on their backs, containing the tender seedlings. The air is thick with the earthy scent of soaked soil and the crisp, clean breath of the mountain wind. This is not a task for machines. It never has been, nor could it be. Each delicate rice seedling, carefully grown in nursery beds, is transplanted by hand, one by one, line by meticulous line. The workers step into the bracingly cold water, their legs sinking into the soft mud, and press the tender stalks into the earth with gentle, practiced fingers. It's a rhythm that feels almost sacred in its repetition. Back bent, arm out, hand press, release, repeat. This slow, deliberate dance continues all day, sometimes for weeks, depending on the size of the field. Children follow their elders, splashing in the shallow waters, mimicking the precise movements. They learn not from textbooks or formal lessons, but by standing in the water, by feeling the subtle resistance of the mud, by instinctively learning the perfect spacing by eye. This is how knowledge survives here, lived, embodied, rather than merely spoken. Planting is more than arduous labor. It is a profound ceremony. Offerings are reverently made to the mountain spirits, their blessings invoked for a good harvest. Songs, passed down through the ages, fill the air. In some villages, elders scatter the first handful of seedlings as a special blessing, a communion with the land. Every field planted is not just a promise of food. It's a solemn vow to the land, to the cherished ancestors, and to the children yet to come. The pace is unhurried, flowing with the natural rhythm of the land. No one rushes the dragon. No one races the mountain. Instead, the rhythm of planting becomes a moving meditation, a slow, deliberate dance of human and nature, of unwavering patience and profound purpose. And as the days gently pass, tender green shoots begin to rise from the watery fields, like hopeful whispers breaking the surface. From this moment forward, the terraces will grow. Not just rice, but hope itself. Each seed is a silent prayer. Each row, a quiet defiance against hunger and the modern world's relentless haste. And so begins the cycle once again, not with noise or fire, but with hands in mud and hearts in the sky. The dragon is awake. The mountain breathes. And the future is planted, one precious seed at a time. Scattered along the winding ridgelines and nestled harmoniously in the crooks of the terraces are the very heartbeats of the dragon's backbone. Villages like Pingon, Dai, and Jinjin are not merely settlements. They are living museums of heritage, where every home, every winding path, and every timber balcony clings to the mountain like a cherished memory that steadfastly refuses to fade. The houses are skillfully built of dark timber, resting on sturdy stilts to protect them from the torrential seasonal rains and the steepness of the slope. Their rooftops, dark and sharply slanted, elegantly mirror the graceful lines of the terraces they overlook. From above, they appear like quaint wooden lanterns, gently floating on waves of verdant green. Inside these homes, life is simple, profoundly warm, and deeply communal. Generations often share a single home, fostering a powerful sense of family and continuity. Meals are cooked over crackling wood fires, filling the air with the comforting aroma of hearth and home. The distinct smell of rice wine and fragrant bamboo smoke drifts lazily into the crisp mountain air, a signature scent of the region. The people here belong primarily to two ethnic minorities, the Zhuang and the Red Yao, each with their own unique language, distinct customs, and a rich tapestry of stories. You'll instantly recognize the Yao women by their magnificent long black hair, which, traditionally, is uncut since childhood and coiled into elegant, intricate shapes atop their heads. Some allow it to fall like silk waterfalls when they bathe in the river, a scene of such natural grace it borders on myth. Despite modernization slowly creeping up the mountain trails, traditions here hold strong, tenacious, and vibrant. Handwoven clothes, dyed in deep indigo hues, are still common. Wooden looms creak rhythmically in quiet rooms, weaving patterns centuries old. Music, played on haunting reed pipes and resonant bronze drums, still accompanies vibrant village festivals. Weddings still involve ancient ritual dances, and the harvest is still welcomed with heartfelt songs of gratitude. Hospitality is not a transaction here. It's a reflex, an inherent part of their cultural fabric. Guests are generously offered fragrant tea brewed from local leaves, potent rice wines served in carved gourds, and captivating stories passed down from elders who remember the mountain before electricity arrived, before the outside world intruded. They speak of dragons in the mist, of revered ancestors who first carved these monumental hills, and of benevolent spirits who still guard the precious fields. And though tourism now brings visitors from every corner of the world, the timeless rhythm of village life continues, largely undisturbed. The rice still grows. The ancient rituals still mark the turning of the seasons. The terraces, like the people who built and sustained them, endure, not by fiercely resisting change, but by absorbing it slowly, carefully, like water descending one gentle level at a time. Here, nestled within the dragon's majestic coils, life is not rushed. It flows. It echoes. It remembers. To walk the terraces of Longji is to walk through layers of living myth. The hills are not merely soil and stone. They are vibrantly alive with stories whispered through rustling bamboo groves and carried on the gentle mountain wind. For the villagers, these mountains are not simply land to be tilled. They are sacred beings, shaped by benevolent gods, guarded by powerful spirits, and inhabited by tales passed reverently from one generation to the next. The most enduring and widely believed legend speaks of a colossal sleeping dragon whose immense body stretches across the ridgelines, its mighty spine rising and falling in coils, the very terraces themselves. Locals deeply believe that the sweeping curves of the mountain are not solely man-made, but rather the dragon's ancient scales, rising and falling almost imperceptibly with its quiet, slumbering breath. When mist rolls in from the valley, covering the paddies in a soft, ethereal white, it is said the dragon stirs, breathing gently in its ancient sleep. Another cherished tale recounts how the terraces were born from divine generosity. In a time of devastating famine, the ancestors climbed high into these mountains and prayed with profound devotion to the heavens. Moved by their unwavering faith and suffering, the gods sent life-giving rain and instructed them to carve the hills into steps so that rice, the staple of life, could grow. As the people obeyed, a magnificent dragon appeared, guiding their hands with its wisdom. Ever since, they have honored the mountain with deep respect, never shouting in the fields lest they disturb the spirits, never cutting trees without a solemn prayer. These beliefs are not written in books or academic texts. They live vividly in the songs sung during the planting season, in the incense burned before a new growing season begins, in the reverent silence kept during misty mornings. Children grow up hearing these tales not as mere fantasy, but as absolute truth, profoundly embedded in the very land they inhabit. To laugh at the dragon, they believe, is to risk a bad harvest. To disrespect the spirits is to invite flood or drought, an imbalance of nature. There are spirits in the water, too. Some farmers still make quiet offerings before releasing the spring water into the terraces for the first time each year. A few drops of precious rice wine, a prayer murmured under breath. Not for show, not for an audience, but simply as tradition, as natural and essential as tying a shoe. And whether you intellectually believe in dragons or not, something undeniably sacred hangs in the air here. Maybe it's the profound silence. Maybe it's the ethereal clouds that embrace the peaks. Or maybe it's the quiet, unshakable certainty that this place is more than human work. It's a living story still being told, written not in ink, but in the enduring language of stone, the ceaseless flow of water, and the life-giving promise of rice. For centuries, the dragon's backbone was a secret jealously kept by the mountains themselves, remote, quiet, and known intimately only to those who called its winding slopes home. But no place, no matter how sacred or secluded, remains untouched forever. Eventually, the asphalt road came, snaking its way up the slopes. Wires followed, bringing electricity and the whisper of the outside world. Tourists, armed with cameras and smartphones, began to climb the hills alongside the farmers, and the terraces, ancient and weathered, faced a profound question they'd never had to answer before. How do you survive, truly survive, the relentless march of the modern world without losing your soul? At first, there was understandable worry. Some feared the mountain would be sold off, piece by painstaking piece, to developers, that sterile concrete would replace warm wood, that their vibrant culture would become little more than a staged costume for curious onlookers. But the resilient people of Longji didn't just endure, they adapted, not by abandoning their ancient past, but by skillfully weaving the present into it, one careful, deliberate thread at a time, creating a new, stronger fabric. Villagers, with a wisdom born of generations living on the land, opened their humble homes to travelers. These weren't impersonal hotels or sterile resorts, but rather intimate family stays, echoing the warmth of genuine hospitality. Guests weren't just visitors. They were temporary members of the household, sharing meals of fragrant sticky rice, perfectly steamed in hollow bamboo stalks, alongside wild greens foraged from the mountainside just that morning. They slept not in climate-controlled rooms, but in traditional wooden stilt houses, where the rhythmic creak of timbers often accompanied the crooning of crickets, and where the raucous crow of roosters still proudly proclaimed the dawn, untouched by alarm clocks. This was no meticulously staged spectacle for tourist consumption. It was raw, honest life, lived out loud. And amidst this quiet revolution of welcome, the ancient agricultural rhythm persisted. Each season, without fail, the local people continued their timeless ritual, flooding the intricate terraced fields, planting each rice seedling by hand, their fingers adept and swift, and harvesting with sickles whose blades had been worn smooth by the passage of countless harvests, polished by the very act of life-giving labor. Children, after their lessons in the small village schoolhouse, didn't head for screens, but for the fields at dusk, learning the ancient ways from their parents and grandparents. For the people of Longji, tourism, while a welcome vein of income, merely sustained the body. Rice, however, nourished the very soul of their existence. One, then, became the symbiotic partner of the other. Both were undeniably essential, two sides of the same intricately carved coin. While the allure of bustling cities had, for some young villagers, proved too strong to resist, an encouraging number, after tasting urban life, found themselves drawn back to the mist-shrouded peaks and emerald valleys. There was something profoundly magnetic about the terraces, a pull deeper, more primal than mere nostalgia. It was in the hushed whisper of water as it coursed through the ancient irrigation channels, a perpetual song of sustenance. It was in the breathtaking spectacle of a million stars mirroring themselves in the glassy surface of the flooded paddy fields, blurring the line between earth and firmament. It was in the quiet, enduring wisdom that the mountains themselves seemed to impart, a deep lesson in patience and perseverance etched into every slope and stone. Local festivals, once intimate gatherings accompanied by the sole rhythm of hand-beaten drums, had indeed grown louder, a necessary concession to larger crowds and modern expectations. Yes, the amplified voices of singers now echoed through the valleys, carried by microphones, a stark contrast to the purely acoustic past, and bilingual signs, thoughtfully translated into Mandarin and English, now stood reverently beside the sacred springs. Yet, beneath these superficial changes, the core rituals remained inviolate. Ancestral offerings were still made, smoke curling skyward carrying prayers of gratitude. And the elders, with voices as weathered and wise as the mountains themselves, still led the ancient songs, their melodies binding past to present, ensuring the spirit of Longji endured. The dragon's backbone, far from resisting the relentless march of change, had embraced it with an astonishing grace, a profound, inherent balance. The terraces, a testament to human ingenuity and enduring spirit, remained not as relics frozen in a bygone era, but as living entities, breathing with the rhythm of time. They flexed and adjusted to new currents, adapting their form, yet their fundamental essence remained unbroken. In an age where the delicate threads of tradition are so often brutally severed in the pursuit of relentless progress, Longji stands as a quiet, powerful testament. It is proof that progress, when wielded with intention and respect, can indeed walk gently upon the earth. It demonstrates, with every verdant curve, that the old ways, imbued with such beauty and wisdom, still possess a vital and irreplaceable place in our rapidly modernizing world. Indeed, the dragon's backbone is a tapestry constantly rewoven, a landscape that is never precisely the same twice. With the cyclical ballet of each season, it seems to shed its very skin, transforming its colors, shifting its moods, like a grand, sentient being. While the concrete jungles of our cities undergo their seismic shifts over years, these ancient terraces undergo their breathtaking metamorphosis in mere weeks. They are draped not just in the ephemeral light of the sun, but in the profound, eternal rhythm of existence itself. To linger among them for a full year is to be privileged enough to witness a mountain truly breathe, to feel its pulse, to understand its living, evolving heart. Spring arrives, not with a fanfare, but like a mirror held up to the heavens. The terraces, meticulously prepared for the new planting, are meticulously flooded, their still surfaces transforming into vast, silvered panes of glass. Here, the sky is not merely above, it is also beneath your feet, reflected with perfect clarity. Wisps of clouds drift in two dimensions, creating an ethereal sensation where visitors often speak of walking through the very heavens. The fields, while visually empty of burgeoning crops, are undeniably full, brimming with nascent potential, with the promise of life soon to awaken. Beneath the serene, reflective surface, an unseen world of vitality stirs, preparing for its grand unveiling. Summer then explodes onto the scene in an exuberant burst of green. The delicate rice shoots, having drunk deeply from the spring rains, stretch tall and straight, blanketing the countless hills in an emerald cascade that seems to pour endlessly into the valleys. From a distant vantage point, the terraces resemble nothing so much as ribbons of shimmering velvet, unfurling and rolling in every conceivable direction, a verdant dreamscape. The air hangs warm and heavy, pregnant with humidity, a constant chorus of frogs calling out from the water-filled paddies. Farmers, knee-deep in the cool, life-giving water, labor tirelessly from the first blush of dawn until the last amber whisper of dusk, their iconic conical hats bobbing like tiny, determined sails on a vast, jade-green sea. Autumn, the season of fulfillment, paints the landscape in a breathtaking palette of gold. This is harvest time, a period of immense gratitude and communal effort. The rice, now fully mature, ripens to a rich, burnished hue, and the terraces, as if catching fire from the sunlight itself, glow with a radiant warmth, bursting with the bounty of the grain. The fields ripple and sigh in the gentle wind, a golden wave stretching to the horizon, while the rhythmic thrum of drums echoes through the villages, a celebratory heartbeat. Families gather, their hands calloused, their faces beaming with the satisfaction of hard work rewarded. Songs, ancient and joyful, are sung with gusto, weaving through the mountain air and the rich, sweet aroma of sticky rice, cooked in countless kitchens, perfumes the entire community. It is not merely a season of labor's end. It is a profound celebration of life, of sustenance, of an enduring connection to the earth. The dragon, now fully awake and vibrant, generously offers its magnificent bounty. Winter, in its turn, draws the mountain into a profound stillness, a period of quiet introspection and rest. The terraces, stripped of their vibrant green and gold, lie empty and exposed. The life-giving water, having fulfilled its purpose, has drained away, leaving behind the stark, elegant lines of the earthworks. Occasionally, a soft, hushed snowfall descends, dusting the terraced steps in a pristine white, transforming them into a winter wonderland. At other times, a delicate filigree of frost clings to the stone walls, resembling intricate lace, a fragile artwork crafted by the cold. There are no tools in the fields, no clamor of human voices, only the deep, resonant silence of the sleeping earth. The dragon sleeps, a powerful guardian in repose, resting, dreaming, patiently waiting for the cycle of rebirth to begin anew. Each season, truly, writes a distinct poem upon the canvas of Longji. Spring reflects, a mirror to the soul. Summer grows, a testament to verdant life. Autumn feeds, a bountiful feast for the spirit. Winter rests, a period of quiet anticipation. The profound beauty of Longji resides not merely in its striking topographical shape, but in its unwavering, eloquent cycle. It lies in its effortless acceptance of time, its graceful surrender to the ebb and flow of natural forces without a trace of resistance. It transforms quietly, profoundly, never needing to announce its magnificence with a grand flourish. Photographers flock here, their lenses eagerly chasing the elusive light, yearning to capture something eternal, a moment frozen in time. But the terraces, with their inherent, dynamic vitality, refuse to be static for anyone. They move, they breathe, they constantly evolve. They teach us, with a gentle, persistent wisdom, that true beauty is never a fixed state. It is a living, breathing rhythm, a daily practice of patience and care, a promise renewed with every turning season. And so, the dragon turns once more, not with a furious roar or consuming flame, but with the gentle, life-giving elements of water, grain, and wind. In the final reckoning, the Longji terraces are far more than mere agricultural fields. They are a profound vow, quiet yet enduring, meticulously curved and carved into the very sinews of the mountainside. They represent a promise, sacred and unbroken, meticulously passed down from calloused hand to devoted hand, from life-giving season to life-giving season, from one generation to the next. The dragon's backbone is not simply a wonder of agricultural prowess or an astonishing masterpiece of engineering. It is, at its heart, the epic story of what unfolds when humanity makes the conscious, deliberate choice to live in harmonious collaboration with the land, rather than in endless conflict against it. There were, undeniably, easier paths. The ancient ancestors of Longji could have chosen the inviting flatlands of the valleys, forsaking the arduous slopes for more forgiving terrain. But they chose to stay. They studied every nuanced curve of the slope, listened intently to the unspoken language of the stone, followed the persistent whisper of the water, and in doing so, they achieved the seemingly impossible, rendering it ordinary. They learned to feed entire villages upon the very face of a mountain. Every subtle curve of these ancient terraces holds a profound lesson, reaching far beyond the cultivation of rice. They speak of an unwavering patience, of a powerful legacy meticulously tended, of a profound, generational care. These colossal earthworks were not the product of fleeting years or even decades. They demanded centuries, a testament to collective persistence that dwarfs individual lifespans. There is, quite simply, no shortcut to such deep harmony, no machine that can replicate the intimate knowledge etched into each rough stone wall by countless calloused hands and quiet, unyielding persistence. And yet, nothing about them feels frozen in time. The terraces are vibrantly alive. They evolve, they bend gracefully with the capricious whims of the weather, with the ever-changing needs of the people who tend them, and with the shifting shape of the wider world. That, perhaps, is their most guarded secret. They were never rigid. They were always inherently fluid. Even now, as the modern world, with its invisible signals and glowing screens, inevitably climbs the ancient hills, the terraces remain steadfastly grounded. They change, yes, but they do not vanish, for their roots extend far beyond mere soil. They are deeply embedded in story, in ritual, in the deceptively simple, yet enduring, act of planting a seed and entrusting its fate to the boundless sky. To walk the dragon's backbone is to bear witness to a profound contract, an unspoken covenant between humans and the earth itself. It is a contract signed not with ink, but with the honest sweat of labor and the relentless kiss of the sun, renewed with the bounty of every single harvest. It serves as a gentle, yet powerful, reminder that progress does not always equate to speed, and that true greatness does not always announce itself with a thundering roar. Sometimes it murmurs softly, like a clear mountain stream slipping effortlessly over ancient stone. And perhaps that is precisely why these terraces resonate so deeply with so many, from the calloused hands of farmers to the wide-eyed wonder of travelers and the boundless imagination of dreamers. They stand as a tangible representation of what we, in our frantic rush towards a future, have almost forgotten: that the most lasting and meaningful creations in this world are not forged with brute force, but with a patient rhythm, a profound humility, and the immeasurable sweep of time. The dragon sleeps, its silent majesty undeniable. The people endure, their spirit unyielding, and the mountain remembers, holding centuries of wisdom in its ancient stone. Most visitors to the Giza Plateau instinctively lift their gaze to the monumental sky, their eyes drawn inexorably upwards to the towering, unmistakable silhouettes of the pyramids and the enigmatic, unchanging stare of the Great Sphinx. But few among them pause to ponder what might lie beneath their feet, below the shifting sands, beneath the ancient, fertile silt of the Nile, under centuries of forgotten currents. For in the quiet, unassuming shallows near the ancient village of Abu Rash, a mere stone's throw from the iconic Giza Plateau, a strange and unsettling tale has begun to stir. It speaks not of soaring structures, but of something enormous, profoundly eroded, and, for too long, stubbornly ignored. It speaks of an underwater sphinx. Local fishermen, their knowledge rooted in generations of navigating these very waters, have whispered of it for ages. They speak of a smoothly curved shape, too perfectly symmetrical to be a mere quirk of nature, a distinctly feline form half buried in the thick mud and waterlogged sediment of the riverbed. When the Nile's life-giving waters recede during periods of severe drought, parts of this colossal form are said to briefly emerge into view. Stone curves, unmistakable grooves, and what some swear is a meticulously carved paw, impossibly worn down by the ceaseless caress of water and time, yet unmistakably shaped by human hands. This isn't a landmark conveniently located on any tourist map. There are no welcoming guideposts, no velvet ropes cordoning off a prized artifact, no idling tour buses disgorging curious crowds nearby. Only an area thick with swaying reeds, brackish water, and in profound, almost palpable silence. Explorers brave enough to venture into this forgotten realm claim the very land itself feels different, strangely charged, as if ancient memory clings to its every particle. And beneath the murky surface, sonar scans, peering through the aqueous veil, have indeed picked up intriguing geometric patterns and what appear to be massive blocks, placed with undeniable intent, not randomly scattered by natural forces. But what truly ignites the imagination, and indeed rattles the foundations of established history, are the claims that this enigmatic figure, a sphinx-like formation submerged so close to Giza, may predate the pyramids entirely, not by mere decades, but by millennia. If such a revelation were proven true, it would not merely revise. It would utterly shatter the meticulously constructed, long-accepted chronology of Egyptian civilization. The mainstream timeline, the bedrock of Egyptology, anchors the construction of the Great Sphinx firmly around 2500 BCE. Yet, this underwater form, if genuinely carved and not a natural caprice, could conceivably belong to an age when the vast Sahara was still a vibrant, green expanse, and the mighty Nile, untamed and unpredictable, snaked wildly through a wetter, far lusher land. Skeptics, of course, are quick to dismiss it, labeling it a misidentified rock formation, a mere trick of the light and water, a natural limestone outcrop shaped over eons by currents and, perhaps, by the hopeful, romantic imagination of those who wish to see more. Yet, the persistent anomalies, the consistent grooves, the suggestive curves, the uncanny alignment with certain celestial markers, all conspire to invite far more questions than they offer convenient answers. The site, frustratingly, remains largely unexcavated. Official archaeologists, bound by strict protocols and a cautious adherence to established paradigms, have largely turned a blind eye. Perhaps, indeed, it is nothing more than a weathered stone. But perhaps, just perhaps, it is everything. A silent, submerged relic not just of Egypt's profound past, but of an entire world, a civilization perhaps, lost to the relentless twin forces of flood and time. For now, the so-called underwater Sphinx lies in its watery tomb, not truly sleeping, but waiting. And if it could finally speak, one can only wonder what earth-shattering secrets it would finally tell, and why so many, entrenched in their own narratives, seem so stubbornly determined not to listen. The legend of the underwater Sphinx, once a hushed murmur confined to local folklore, began its remarkable journey into global curiosity in the 1980s. This was the era when a handful of audacious independent researchers and intrepid divers, driven by an insatiable curiosity, began publishing a series of strange, often unsettling reports. These accounts spoke of a massive, lion-bodied figure, unmistakably man-made in its contours, partially submerged in the watery earth near the very foot of the Giza Plateau. Early photographs were, predictably, grainy, ambiguous, and all too easily dismissed by the establishment. Yet, those nascent images, however imperfect, ignited a spark that could not be extinguished, a potent force that, once unleashed, could not be put back in the bottle. That spark was curiosity, and, perhaps more dangerously, doubt. One of the most vocal and passionate early proponents was an amateur Egyptologist, whose name has since become synonymous with the controversy. He adamantly claimed to have personally witnessed a monumental, deeply weathered structure, shrouded beneath layers of Nile silt and ancient flood deposits, during a rare and fleeting window of severe drought. According to his compelling account, the figure was unequivocally not an isolated, random rock or a mere trick of erosion. It possessed clear geometric precision, distinct anatomical features like legs, a profound bilateral symmetry, and even the faint, almost ghostly suggestion of a carved human face. This assertion, naturally, struck at the very heart of the traditional historical narrative. Egyptology, as a respected academic discipline, is meticulously built upon rigid structures, established timelines, and peer-reviewed consensus. Most scholars confidently place the construction of the iconic Giza pyramids and the colossal Great Sphinx at approximately 2500 BC, firmly within the reign of the 4th dynasty pharaoh, Khafre. The audacious suggestion of another Sphinx, one demonstrably older and partially submerged, would demand a seismic rethinking not merely of Egyptian history, but of the entire accepted timeline of human civilization itself. Mainstream academics, as expected, responded with a mixture of profound caution and, in many cases, outright disdain. Without the bedrock of peer-reviewed excavation reports, verifiable carbon dating results, or meticulous stratigraphic studies, they argued, such a sensational claim simply could not be taken seriously within the scientific community. Many insisted, quite logically, that the so-called underwater Sphinx was almost certainly a natural geological formation, limestone, endlessly weathered by thousands of years of the Nile's relentless flooding and the erosive power of its sediment. In Egypt, they sagely pointed out, nature often possesses an uncanny ability to mimic the intentional. Wind, water, and the inexorable march of time are, after all, master sculptors in their own right. Yet, despite the official dismissal, the grainy photos continued to circulate. The sonar readings, probing the hidden depths, consistently showed odd patterns that were too regular, too smoothly defined, too unsettlingly suggestive of design to be easily ignored. And then, as is often the case with such profound mysteries, came the theorists. Authors, documentary filmmakers, and fringe historians, unburdened by academic constraints, began to weave elaborate narratives around the enigma. They posited that this submerged sphinx was a relic of a truly forgotten civilization, perhaps the fabled Atlanteans, or an as-yet undiscovered pre-dynastic Egyptian culture, tragically lost in a cataclysmic flood that scoured the ancient Sahara. They pointed to the distinctive water erosion patterns already observed on the original Great Sphinx, arguing these were signs of ancient rainfall, not wind. They speculated about lost technologies capable of such monumental construction and hinted darkly that what lay hidden beneath the shifting sands and the currents of the Nile might be far, far older than accepted memory dared to allow. The debate, fueled by a burgeoning public fascination, grew ever louder, reverberating through books, conferences, and burgeoning online communities. But on the ground, nothing moved. No official, state-sponsored dig was ever launched. No esteemed museum publicly laid claim to the potential artifact. And so, the Sphinx, if indeed that is what it truly is, remained precisely where it had always been, buried beneath the silt, suspended precariously between the tantalizing realm of myth and the stubborn reality of mud. The very notion that something of such monumental scale could exist near Giza, potentially predating the pyramids themselves, is not merely provocative. It is utterly revolutionary. If the underwater Sphinx proves to be more than a mere geological fluke, more than a coincidence of erosion, then the very genesis of Egypt's magnificent story did not begin with the grandeur of the Fourth Dynasty. Instead, it would stretch back into an unimaginable prehistory, to an era when the Sahara was a lush, green savanna teeming with life, and the Nile, a wilder, wider, and far less predictable behemoth, roamed freely across the land. This astonishing possibility gained significant traction in the 1990s, catalyzed by the groundbreaking work of geologist Dr. Robert Schoch. Dr. Schoch, rather than focusing on the submerged anomaly, meticulously studied the Great Sphinx itself. He presented a compelling argument that the deep, vertical weathering patterns observed on the Sphinx's enclosure walls were not, as conventionally believed, caused by centuries of wind and sand abrasion. Instead, he argued, they bore the unmistakable signature of heavy, sustained ancient rainfall, a type of precipitation that had not blessed the Giza Plateau since at least 7000 BC. This geological evidence, if correct, would necessitate pushing the possible date of the Great Sphinx back by thousands of years, placing its creation well before the first pharaohs even began to carve their names into stone. If water, in its relentless passage, played such a pivotal role in shaping the original Sphinx, then the question naturally arises, could water also have concealed an even older, lost sibling beneath its shifting embrace? The so-called underwater Sphinx is situated in a lower-lying region, precisely where ancient floodplains once dominated the landscape. Modern tools, like high-resolution satellite imagery and sophisticated ground-penetrating radar, have begun to unveil tantalizing hints. Possible foundational structures, faint but consistent rectangular outlines, and unmistakable signs of deliberate shaping, all buried deep beneath layers of silt and periodically submerged by seasonal waters. These subtle yet persistent signs strongly suggest that the site may not just be older than the Great Sphinx. It may hail from an epoch so ancient that nothing in Egypt was yet recorded in the intricate hieroglyphs we associate with its dynastic past. Supporters of this audacious theory often point to Egypt's vast, largely missing chapters, the enigmatic chronological gap between the end of the last ice age and the eventual emergence of the first recognized dynasties. During this immense span of prehistory, the mighty Nile was far from static. It shifted its course dramatically. The Sahara, now an iconic dry desert, transitioned from its earlier incarnation as lush, wet grasslands. Within this fluid, tumultuous period, it is entirely conceivable that civilizations may have risen and fallen, leaving behind no written records, their existence entirely undocumented and erased by the relentless march of time and environmental change. The idea that an ancient people, pre-literate and certainly pre-pharaonic, could have conceived and shaped a monument of this colossal scale often seems implausible to traditional historians, conditioned by established timelines. But is it? Consider the astonishing site of Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, constructed around 9600 BCE by hunter-gatherer societies. It features megalithic pillars adorned with intricate carved animals, predating Stonehenge by thousands of years. Could Egypt, too, harbor a similar, profound secret? An ancient, sophisticated culture that marked the land with stone long before papyrus was ever used to carry their stories? If the underwater Sphinx was indeed built in such an ancient time, it would utterly transform everything we currently believe about human history. It would suggest not merely forgotten ruins, but an entire forgotten age, an era that may have subtly whispered its wisdom to the later builders of Giza, leaving behind not just myth, but perhaps a monumental testament, drowned by ancient floods and then utterly forgotten. Stone, it is often said, does not lie, it remembers. And around the mysterious site of the so-called underwater Sphinx, the stone quietly, yet persistently, tells a story, not just of the vastness of time, but of the omnipresent, transformative power of water. Sediment layers, distinct erosion marks, and ancient flood patterns around the site hint at a profound history that predates the Sahara's desertification, long before the Nile settled into its familiar, controlled course, and eons before the pharaohs carved their illustrious names into the annals of history. Geologists who have meticulously examined available photographs and data from the site near Abu Rash consistently note peculiar erosion marks, smooth, rounded grooves that strongly suggest prolonged exposure to flowing water. Crucially, these patterns are not consistent with wind or sand erosion, but rather with rainfall and dynamic water movement, forces largely absent from this specific region for many thousands of years. Similar geological arguments have been powerfully put forth regarding the Great Sphinx itself, particularly the enclosing walls of its ancient trench. Critics of the standard timeline emphatically point out that the deep, vertical fissures observed on the Sphinx's surrounding enclosure bear no resemblance whatsoever to the angular, scouring effects of wind erosion. Instead, they uncannily mimic the distinct patterns left by heavy, sustained prehistoric rainfall. Now, at the possible underwater Sphinx site, we see the very same geological signature. Only this time it lies mysteriously hidden beneath the shallow expanse of a flood basin. During periods of unusually low Nile flow or through limited, unofficial reconnaissance efforts, parts of the submerged structure are reportedly said to rise into tantalizing view. Lion-like hunches, unmistakable shoulders, and a foundation that appears far too level and deliberate to be the arbitrary work of nature. Researchers who have surveyed the area note that the basin itself is geologically active, characterized by a high clay content and compelling evidence of ancient water tables that fluctuated violently in the distant past. The stone there, though heavily worn, is not randomly abraded. The wear follows the distinct, sculpted contours of the structure itself, flowing in lines that suggest not natural chaos, but deliberate carving, followed by the inevitable process of prolonged submersion. Furthermore, some sediment layers found around the site date back to the early Holocene epoch, a time when Egypt was demonstrably wetter, far greener, and notoriously prone to massive, devastating floods. If a monument of such magnitude had indeed been carved during that ancient era, It could have proudly stood for centuries before being slowly swallowed by encroaching mud, forgotten by migrating populations, and ultimately buried under the Nile's wandering, relentless silt. Skeptics, naturally, argue that all of this is merely coincidence. Natural formations subtly teased into myth by hopeful, perhaps overzealous, eyes. But water does not spontaneously form perfect symmetry. It does not carve distinct pores. It does not meticulously create aligned foundations or echo the precise geometry of a known sphinx situated just a few miles away. So the question deepens, becoming more profound and more urgent. If water, in its silent power, erased this magnificent monument from view, what else has it taken with it? And, more critically, how much of our shared history still lies hidden, patiently waiting, beneath the surface? If the underwater sphinx truly exists, silent, meticulously carved, and undeniably ancient, then why, in a land so utterly obsessed with its antiquities, has it never been formally excavated? Why does it persist, cloaked beneath layers of mud and an almost oppressive silence, bypassed by generations of archaeologists, largely ignored by successive governments, and left to the inexorable currents of the Nile? The answer, much like the artifact itself, lies shrouded beneath the surface, complex and multifaceted. Egypt's formidable archaeological institutions are, understandably, fiercely protective of their heritage, and rightfully so. The nation guards its unparalleled ancient patrimony with rigid protocols, stringent excavation rules, and an unyielding insistence on academic consensus before any major pronouncement can be made. To initiate a dig at any site, especially one that so profoundly challenges the traditional, established timeline of Egyptian civilization, is an undertaking of immense complexity. It demands not only substantial permits and multi-million-dollar funding, but also rigorous international oversight and, most crucially, institutional approval from the highest echelons of the Egyptian antiquities establishment. And that elusive approval, often unspoken yet universally understood, frequently hinges on a single, paramount rule. Do not rewrite Egypt's foundational history without a veritable mountain of absolutely undeniable, irrefutable evidence. And therein lies the crux of the problem. The so-called underwater sphinx has, to this day, never received an official, state-sponsored excavation. Independent researchers, intrepid foreign academics, and those operating on the fringes of mainstream theory have indeed studied the area, employing various non-invasive methods. However, without formal governmental backing and the subsequent controlled excavation, their intriguing findings remain anecdotal, compellingly suggestive, but ultimately not conclusive enough to satisfy the rigorous demands of orthodox archaeology. There is also the formidable, unyielding reality of the Nile itself. The river, far from being a static feature, is a living, breathing entity. It floods, it recedes, and its channels shift and meander dramatically over decades, if not centuries. The alleged site of the monument is notoriously flood-prone, often submerged for a significant portion of the year, making any sustained excavation an engineering nightmare. Such an undertaking would necessitate immense resources to drain the area, to reroute significant quantities of water, to painstakingly protect nearby ecosystems that would be disrupted, and to manage the structural damage that centuries of sediment pressure and waterlogging have undoubtedly caused. That alone would easily consume years, if not decades, of intensive labor and financial investment. Furthermore, profound political factors are at play. A discovery of this magnitude, if definitively validated, would disrupt far more than just academic timelines. It could irrevocably challenge established national narratives, potentially upset a deeply ingrained sense of national pride, and, perhaps most critically, attract a media frenzy that the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities might not be eager, or equipped, to welcome. The ministry typically prefers to champion and promote discoveries that unequivocally reinforce Egypt's existing grandeur and its well-understood timeline, rather than those that fundamentally question or rewrite its foundational history. Some whispers, circulating quietly in academic and alternative circles, suggest that certain powerful institutions within Egypt may already know more than they publicly reveal, that preliminary studies or clandestine investigations have been conducted behind closed doors. But without public records, peer-reviewed findings, or official government announcements, these tantalizing claims inevitably drift into the realm of conspiracy theory, unprovable and thus easily dismissed. And so, the monument, whether by sheer accident or deliberate design, remains profoundly buried. It sleeps under a suffocating blanket of mud, overshadowed by a thick cloud of skepticism. It is a strange, bitter irony that in a land so utterly obsessed with preserving and showcasing its ancient past, one of its greatest, most paradigm-shifting mysteries may lie hidden in plain sight, unclaimed, unstudied, and tragically untouched by time's official, accepted record. But as history continually reminds us, nothing, not even secrets buried for millennia, stays buried forever. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was far more than a mere sculpture. It was a potent symbol, an embodiment of profound power and mysterious wisdom. Part guardian, part deity, part enigma, this iconic creature, with the formidable body of a lion and the discerning head of a man, represented the fusion of raw physical strength with cultivated royal intellect. It stood as a cosmic sentinel, strategically placed at the very thresholds where the divine intersected with the mortal realm. The most celebrated, of course, is the Great Sphinx of Giza. Towering an astonishing 66 feet high, it has majestically guarded the sacred plateau for over 4,000 years, its ancient gaze fixed on the rising sun, standing eternal vigil over the tombs of pharaohs. Its precise origin remains a subject of intense debate. Some scholars contend it was definitively built by Pharaoh Khafre, while others argue it may be far older, its regal face having been skillfully recarved over the vast expanse of time. What, then, would it truly signify if a second Sphinx, hidden, subtly water-worn, and potentially of far greater antiquity, were to truly exist just a few miles away? It would, without exaggeration, fundamentally change everything. No known records, no deciphered papyri, speak of twin sphinxes at Giza. The voluminous ancient texts, the very bedrock of our understanding, are strikingly silent on such a monumental pairing. Yet, in later Greco-Roman traditions, there are intriguing mentions of powerful guardians positioned in a harmonious balance, symmetrically flanking sacred spaces. In the foundational principles of Egyptian architecture itself, symmetry is not merely aesthetic. It is sacred, imbued with profound cosmic significance. Temples frequently boast twin colossal statues, twin towering obelisks, twin majestic avenues of lions leading to their inner sanctums. Why, then, would there not be twin sphinxes guarding the most sacred plateau of all? Some pioneering researchers argue that the so-called underwater sphinx might not be a mere copy or a later imitation, but rather the original. A primordial prototype, a pre-dynastic version, later replicated on the grander, more enduring scale of the Great Sphinx we know today. If this proves true, it radically suggests that the very idea, the conceptual blueprint, of the Sphinx did not originate with the dynastic builders we credit, but rather sprang from a forgotten, much older culture, whose powerful myths were carried forward, adopted, and meticulously refined over countless millennia. Furthermore, if this enigmatic monument genuinely predates the invention of writing, it may not have been bound by the specific pharaonic ideology we now understand. Its purpose could have been vastly different, perhaps astronomical, aligned to celestial events unknown to us now, or deeply ritualistic, marking sacred observances from a forgotten era. It might even have been purely commemorative, marking a cataclysmic event like a global flood or honoring a forgotten god whose name has been lost to time. The lion shape itself is far from accidental. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, lions represented the horizon, the liminal gate between dawn and dusk, between this world and the next. A sphinx facing east perpetually watches the sacred rebirth of the sun, an eternal sentinel. To carve such a creature in stone was to freeze that sacred, cyclical act into an immutable form. Now, truly imagine one carved even before the pyramids rose, aligned with cosmic precision, eternally guarding, patiently waiting. Such a discovery would not merely rewrite Egyptian history. It would fundamentally redefine the very mythos of Egypt itself, presenting it not as the beginning of a grand civilization, but perhaps as the last, echoing vestige of something even older, something far more profound. And the haunting fact that this powerful symbol might be sleeping beneath water, slowly unveiling its secrets, makes it all the more fitting for a guardian of truly lost worlds. As the persistent whispers of the underwater Sphinx reverberate further across the globe, a quiet, yet increasingly profound, divide has opened, a chasm that runs far deeper than sediment or ancient stone. On one side stands the venerable institution of traditional Egyptology, cautious, rigorously structured, and deeply rooted in the slow, painstaking accretion of academic consensus. On the other, a rapidly growing community of independent researchers, audacious alternative historians, and countless curious minds who firmly believe that something truly extraordinary, something potentially paradigm-shifting, is being inexplicably overlooked. Mainstream scholars, with their unwavering commitment to scientific rigor, rightly insist upon tangible evidence, peer-reviewed studies, meticulous stratigraphy, decipherable inscriptions, and precise radiocarbon dates. Their concern is not unwarranted. Egypt is, after all, a land abundant with natural rock formations that, through serendipitous erosion, uncannily resemble human or animal shapes. Misidentifying such formations can lead to rampant misinformation and the erosion of legitimate scholarship. Archaeology, by its very nature, demands extreme caution. The past is fragile, a delicate tapestry that, once broken by careless hands or sensational media hype, cannot be easily reconstructed. However, to those on the other side of the divide, this very caution has, for too long, calcified into an insidious complacency. Independent investigators, many of them highly trained scientists or engineers from outside the traditional archaeological field, argue passionately that the underwater Sphinx and other similar anomalies warrant far deeper, more open-minded study. They point to high-resolution satellite images that reveal unsettlingly unnatural symmetry, to advanced LiDAR scans that detect rectangular foundations unmistakably beneath layers of Nile mud, and to erosion patterns that seem sculpted not by chaotic natural forces, but by deliberate, intelligent design. These critics also question the potential political motivations behind the institutional silence. Tourism dollars, they contend, flow generously through Egypt's well-trodden, officially sanctioned monuments. A newly discovered Sphinx, particularly one that audaciously threatens to upend the accepted timeline, could destabilize Egypt's carefully curated historical narrative and, by extension, its cultural authority. The fear, they suggest, is not of a hoax, but of the monumental, terrifying task of rewriting everything. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and burgeoning online forums now regularly feature the compelling mystery of the underwater Sphinx. It has rapidly evolved into a powerful symbol of hidden history, serving both as a rallying cry for those demanding deeper inquiry and a cautionary tale against the dangers of academic dogma. Supporters passionately call for open, transparent excavation, while detractors vehemently warn against the seductive perils of pseudoscience. The truth, as is so often the case, remains stubbornly lost in the middle, buried beneath a cacophony of voices as thick and opaque as the Nile's ancient silt. This divide is not merely academic, it is profoundly emotional. It speaks to the very core of how we, as a civilization, approach our past. Do we trust only what has been definitively confirmed and etched into official records? Or do we dare to follow the tantalizing hints left just beyond our current reach, allowing curiosity to lead us into uncharted historical waters? The underwater Sphinx, by its very existence, forces that profound question into the open. It is not just a rock or a relic. It is a powerful litmus test for how genuinely curious, how truly open-minded we are collectively allowed to be. And as long as it remains unearthed, both sides will continue to argue endlessly above a silent monument that, though it speaks no words, might, in the end, change absolutely everything. There is an undeniable, almost haunting quality to a mystery buried in plain sight, especially when it assumes the ancient, enigmatic face of a lion, staring up from the primordial mud with an unbroken, profound silence. The so-called underwater sphinx near Giza may or may not be real in the tangible, archaeologically confirmed sense, but its gravitational pull on the human imagination is utterly undeniable. It stirs something deep within us, an innate yearning not merely to discover what is new, but to profoundly remember what has been lost. Because, at its core, the captivating story of a forgotten monument taps into something far older and more universal than the academic discipline of archaeology. It speaks to the elemental human sense of loss itself. We, as a species, have always lived intimately beside ruins. Cities rise and fall with the inevitable cycles of empires. Languages, once vibrant, wither and die. Entire civilizations vanish beneath the relentless march of waves, the inexorable drift of sand, and the sudden, fiery descent of ash. We gaze back at the past not just for neat, digestible answers, but for the fundamental bedrock of our own identity. Who truly were we? How far back do the threads of our collective stories genuinely stretch? And what vital truths have we inadvertently forgotten in our relentless, often heedless, rush toward progress? If the underwater sphinx is indeed real, if it was meticulously carved by human hands before the very dawn of recorded history, it transforms into something far more than a mere relic. It becomes a resonant voice, echoing from a lost chapter of humanity's story that we didn't even know existed. It stands as a profound marker from an age when people may have understood the stars differently, honored the earth more intimately, or carried a complex mythology that we can now only begin to guess at. Some believe it belongs to an advanced prehistoric culture, tragically lost to a global catastrophe, a theory often quickly dismissed as fringe or fantastical. But whether or not that particular narrative holds true, the immense emotional gravity of the possibility remains. To imagine a monument, sculpted long before the towering pyramids, then slowly submerged by rising, ancient waters, and subsequently erased from all human memory, is to confront the terrifying fragility of civilization itself. And perhaps, ultimately, that is precisely why this compelling story, this haunting possibility, persists so powerfully in our collective consciousness. This enigmatic presence, shrouded in the murky depths, serves as a profound counter-narrative to our conventional understanding of history. It whispers that time, far from being a neat, chronological progression, often cycles back on itself, leaving behind echoes of forgotten eras. It underscores the ultimate impermanence of even the mightiest empires, their monumental achievements ultimately yielding to the relentless currents of change. Indeed, it posits that even the most enduring stone, once thought immutable, can be painstakingly erased by the patient, unyielding flow of a river across millennia. More vitally, it stands as a sentinel, reminding us that the age of grand discovery is far from over, that our Earth remains a repository of countless untold narratives, vast archives of secrets yet to be inscribed in any textbook or digital database. In a contemporary world obsessed with instant gratification, inundated by readily available answers, and structured by the vast, interconnected webs of global data, the underwater sphinx emerges as a singular anomaly. It is a potent, unanswered question, a tantalizing possibility, a mystery stubbornly resistant to the sterile gaze of drones or the cold logic of algorithms. And regardless of whether future analysis confirms it to be a natural geological formation or the deliberate, forgotten handiwork of an ancient civilization, its variant compels us to rethink our linear perceptions of time, reminding us that even the most enduring empires are but transient constructs, and that monumental stone, carved with the permanence of human ambition, can slowly melt away if the river's patient currents flow long enough across millennia. More profoundly, it asserts that the age of discovery is far from over, that our Earth remains a vast repository of untold stories and forgotten epics, holding secrets yet unwritten in any textbook. In a contemporary world defined by instant answers, ubiquitous global data streams, and the relentless pursuit of absolute certainty, the underwater sphinx emerges as a singular phenomenon, a profound, unanswered question, a tantalizing possibility, a mystery that stubbornly resists the diagnostic gaze of drones or the predictive power of algorithms. And whether it ultimately proves to be a natural geological formation or a forgotten testament to a lost civilization, its immense value is already secured, for it effortlessly ignites the fires of human wonder. It makes us wonder if the past stretches far deeper, far wider, than our current historical maps suggest. It prompts us to wonder if ancient myths, often dismissed as mere fables, might in fact be the whispered echoes of genuine memory. And perhaps most compellingly, it makes us wonder what else lies just beneath the surface, beneath the familiar veneer of our known world, silently waiting for a discerning eye, a patient ear, or a brave question to unveil it. The underwater Sphinx of Giza, whether its form was intentionally carved or accidentally shaped, whether it is ultimately confirmed or dismissed by archaeological consensus, steadfastly remains where it has always been, beneath the surface, shrouded by ancient mud, cradled by the Nile's waters, beneath the crushing weight of immeasurable time. It bears no inscribed plaque, no grand name, no illuminating spotlight. And yet, in the profound absence of definitive answers, it speaks with an unnerving, resonant softness. For every celebrated monument we have meticulously unearthed from the sands of Egypt, from the Valley of the Kings to the temples of Karnak, countless others remain stubbornly hidden, still buried beneath the earth's surface, still patiently waiting. Some are deemed too fragile, too delicate, to ever withstand the harsh process of excavation, their forms destined to dissolve into dust upon exposure. Others have been irrevocably lost to the ceaseless, shifting embrace of the Nile, drowned beneath accumulating layers of silt and shrouded in geological secrecy, their very existence fading from recorded history. And a select few, like this submerged enigma, lie tantalizingly in plain view, yet are often ignored, not because they lack profound importance, but because they pose unsettling questions, challenging our established paradigms and asking us to confront possibilities for which we are simply not yet ready to provide answers. Perhaps that is the true source of the underwater sphinx's compelling power. It is not its sheer size, impressive as it may be, nor its unfathomable age that captivates us. Rather, it is its profound silence, its resolute refusal to yield immediate answers. This silence forces us into an uncomfortable confrontation with the inherent limits of what we confidently believe we know, and with the disquieting possibility of what vast swathes of history we might have inadvertently, or even deliberately, overlooked. In all likelihood, this mysterious formation may never be fully excavated. The intricate web of political complexities, the ever-present scarcity of funding, and the deeply entrenched traditions of archaeological practice often form invisible walls, taller and more impenetrable than any ancient tomb. But this does not, by any measure, render it irrelevant. Quite the opposite, in fact. The very obscurity of this potential monument, its shrouded existence, has transmuted it into a powerful, albeit silent, mirror, reflecting not merely what might lie buried beneath the waters, but what we, as a civilization, collectively choose to remember, and perhaps more tellingly, what we choose to forget or conveniently ignore. It also serves as a potent reminder that history is not a closed, definitive book, its chapters neatly bound and conclusions drawn. Instead, it is a living, breathing, endlessly complex puzzle, its scattered pieces strewn across vast landscapes and shifting shorelines, perpetually waiting for a subtle shift in the tide of human understanding, a revolutionary change in established thinking, or the brave, inquisitive question of this silent sentinel beneath the waters of Giza serves as a profound meditation on the transient nature of existence. It forcefully reminds us that time, as we perceive it, is far from linear, but rather a spiraling helix where forgotten pasts can re-emerge to challenge our present. Empires, no matter how grand, are ultimately ephemeral constructs, destined to crumble and return to dust, or in this case, to silt. Even the most formidable stones, sculpted by human hands or geological forces, are not immune to the relentless, patient erosion of a river that flows long enough, deep enough. Yet, beyond this humbling lesson in impermanence, the underwater Sphinx offers an even more vital revelation. The age of discovery is far from over. Our planet, despite millennia of exploration and mapping, still cradles secrets not yet committed to any textbook, not yet charted on any database. In an era increasingly defined by instant answers, ubiquitous global data, and the relentless march of technological omniscience, this submerged anomaly stands as a singularly rare and precious thing, an unanswered question in its purest form, a tantalizing possibility, a mystery that stubbornly resists the simplistic categorization of drones or the definitive algorithms of AI. Whether it eventually reveals itself as a colossal natural rock formation sculpted by chance and current, or indeed a forgotten monument to a civilization we have yet to comprehend, its value is already immense. It forces us to wonder, to truly wonder. Is the tapestry of our past far deeper and more intricately woven than our current historical narratives suggest? Does myth, often dismissed as folklore, truly hold fragments of ancestral memory, whispered across generations? And what other astonishing truths lie just beneath the surface, waiting patiently for someone to possess the curiosity, the courage, and the wisdom to listen? This enigmatic underwater Sphinx of Giza, whether its origin is carved or accidental, whether its existence is confirmed or dismissed by future generations, remains precisely where it has always been, submerged, shrouded by layers of mud, embraced by the slow currents of ancient waters, and bearing the immeasurable weight of forgotten time. It boasts no gleaming plaque, no inscribed name, no artificial spotlight to declare its presence. And yet, in the profound silence of its mystery, it speaks with a resonant clarity that deafens the cacophony of certainty. The landscape of Egypt, both above and below its shifting sands, is a vast, open-air archive, brimming with untold stories. For every awe-inspiring monument we have painstakingly unearthed and marveled at, from the pyramids of Giza to the Valley of the Kings, countless others still lie buried, awaiting the archaeologist's spade, or perhaps destined to remain hidden forever. Some are too profoundly fragile to ever see the light of day, their delicate forms preserved only by the very earth that conceals them. Others have been irrevocably claimed by the mighty Nile, swallowed whole by its shifting currents, entombed beneath impenetrable layers of silt and the relentless march of time, becoming watery secrets guarded by the river god itself. And then there are a rare few, much like this colossal submerged enigma, that sit in what might be considered plain view, yet remain largely ignored. Their neglect isn't due to a lack of intrinsic importance or monumental scale, quite the contrary. Their oversight stems from a deeper, more unsettling truth. They pose questions that challenge our established narratives, inquiries that we, as a collective civilization, are not yet intellectually or perhaps even emotionally ready to confront. These are the uncomfortable truths that threaten to dismantle long-held historical frameworks, requiring a profound reevaluation of everything we thought we knew. Perhaps this very paradox, its profound silence amidst such immense potential, is precisely what imbues the underwater Sphinx with such formidable power. It is not merely its staggering size, potentially dwarfing its terrestrial counterpart, nor its unfathomable age, which could rewrite prehistory, that grants it such authority. It is its eloquent, unyielding silence. This powerful stillness compels us, almost against our will, to confront the inherent limits of what we genuinely know, to acknowledge the fragile boundaries of our scientific paradigms and historical consensus. It forces an uncomfortable introspection, a recognition of all that we might have inadvertently overlooked, dismissed, or simply forgotten in the relentless march of perceived progress. In all brutal honesty, the chances of this submerged colossus ever being fully excavated, studied, and brought into the full light of day are heartbreakingly slim. The walls that protect it are not merely geological. They are constructed from layers of complex international politics, the relentless struggle for adequate funding in a world prioritizing immediate returns, and the formidable, often intractable, resistance of long-standing academic traditions. These walls, invisible yet impenetrable, are often taller and more formidable than any ancient tomb ever discovered. Yet, this potential obscurity does not render it irrelevant. Quite the opposite. The monument's very hiddenness, its persistent presence outside the curated museum or the carefully restored archaeological site, has transformed it into something far more profound, a reflective mirror. This mirror does not merely show us what lies buried beneath the waves or the desert sands, but rather, it reflects back to us the very essence of human nature, what we collectively choose to remember, what stories we decide to tell about our past, and, most tellingly, what inconvenient truths we are all too eager to forget. It challenges our selective amnesia, compelling us to consider the narratives we construct and the history we write. More profoundly, this enigmatic presence serves as a potent reminder that history is not a closed book, its final chapters irrevocably written and sealed. Instead, it is an immensely complex, living puzzle, its pieces scattered across vast landscapes and along forgotten shorelines, patiently awaiting a subtle shift in the tide of conventional thought, a bold change in archaeological methodology, or simply a single brave question courageous enough to unsettle centuries of accumulated dust. Perhaps, in some distant future, the waters of the Nile will indeed recede, whether through natural geological process or human intervention, and the full, magnificent form of this leviathan will slowly rise into view, its colossal paws, its powerful body, its enigmatic face, all emerging from its watery shroud. Perhaps advanced ground-penetrating radar or other as yet undreamed-of technologies will finally confirm what ancient myths and legends have long whispered, elevating folklore to factual record. Or perhaps, and perhaps this is its most enduring fate, the mystery will remain inviolate, passed down from generation to generation, a persistent whisper between the very stones of time, a riddle for the ages. But whether it ultimately proves to be a forgotten monument to a lost civilization or merely a fascinating geological mirage, the underwater Sphinx already fulfills its greatest, most sublime purpose. It stirs the human imagination with an almost primal force. In a contemporary world increasingly saturated with information, a society that often feels as though it is drowning in a sea of data and an overwhelming sense of certainty, this profound uncertainty, this magnificent enigma, may well be its most invaluable gift. It reminds us that there is still wonder to be found, still frontiers to explore, still questions without easy answers. For perhaps the most ancient and profound things are not simply buried in layers of sand or lost in the vast expanse of chronological time. Perhaps, indeed, they are buried deep within us, etched into the very fabric of our being, in our intrinsic, insatiable need to explore the unknown, to faithfully remember what has been forgotten, and to hold an unwavering belief that somewhere out there, beneath the crashing waves or the shifting sands of the desert, the ancient past still breathes, still pulses with life, and still waits patiently for us to truly find it. And in doing so, perhaps to find a deeper part of ourselves,